Chapter 466. AI Tianxing versus Zhou Mo. Amidst the faint purple light and the deep black light reflected in countless eyes, two extremely terrifying attacks were about to collide with a loud bang, like a collision between two meteorites. Countless people stared at the battle stage in shock. No one had expected that apart from the battle between the two dark horses, the battle on the battle stage would be so fierce. This battle was between the winner of the previous match, the Yi clan's AI Tianxing vs the Zhou clan's Zhou Mo. What was even more shocking was that AI Tianxing, who was supposed to be the favorite to win the championship, had fallen to a bitter battle and had yet to gain any advantage. This Zhou Mo is probably much stronger than Zhou Xuanwu. The Zhou clan has hidden their strength well. He's also a dark horse. Everyone was shocked. Although during the trip to Scarlet Flame Mountain, everyone knew that the most powerful member of the Zhou clan's younger generation was the elemental spirit body Zhou Mo, who was flaunted by the Zhou clan. No one expected Zhou Mo to be so powerful that he could force Yi Tianxing into such a situation. One had to know that AI Tianxing was in existence at the peak of the younger generation. Just the fact that he was the favorite to win the championship was enough to show everyone's recognition of him. But now, he was being obstructed, and his opponent was Zhou Mo, who wasn't even 20 years old. Now, two dark horses had erupted with peerless combat strength, and now, Zhou Mo had appeared, who could stop AI Tianxing. This year's Flame City Guild tournament was much more unexpected than the previous ones. The four top experts were fighting fiercely, and this undoubtedly stimulated the blood of countless youths. Their chests were filled with a lofty victory, and their faces were flushed with excitement. AI Tianxing and Zhou Mo's battle caused the eyes of the various leaders to flicker. Most people were shocked, but they also slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Zhou Mo's strength had blocked AI Tianxing. As the saying went, when two tigers fought, one was bound to be injured, or even both sides would suffer. This was extremely beneficial to the other participating clans and forces. If Qin Feng, Luin, AI Tianxing, and Zhou Mo were all seriously injured, the chances of the other four advancing would be greatly increased. The Yi and Zhou family members couldn't help but smile bitterly. To the Yi family, they believed that AI Tianxing would definitely win, but now they were in a bitter battle. As for the Zhou family, they had originally wanted Zhou Mo to symbolically fight and then admit defeat, but this little girl's stubbornness flared up and she refused to let go no matter what. She wanted to fight AI Tianxing to the death, so there was nothing they could do. On the battle stage, the two of them faced each other from a distance. The purple light and the deep black light each covered half of the sky, erupting with terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations. AI Tianxing held the long spear in his hand. At the tip of the spear, a bright purple light bloomed slightly, releasing terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations. He stared at Zhou Mo with an extremely solemn expression. Like the others, he had underestimated Zhou Mo. In the fierce battle just now, he had used all his skills, but he couldn't gain the slightest advantage. Is this the power of the elemental spirit body? The Zhou family used this method to hide. They are really scheming. AI Tianxing sighed softly in his heart. He thought that only Qin Feng and Luin needed to be treated seriously, but he didn't expect that there was another big dark horse hidden here. He took a deep breath, and the spiritual energy in his body converged on the long spear in his hand. As more and more spiritual energy was injected into it, the long spear began to tremble slightly, and it became more and more intense. On the other side, the black mark between Zhou Mo's eyebrows flickered. Wisps of black light lingered around her, making her look more enchanting and mysterious. Zhou Mo's jade-like hands quickly formed a seal, and the deep black spiritual energy behind her surged like waves. The sound of waves was endless, and the void trembled from the collision. AI Tianxing's spiritual energy was constantly injected into the long spear, and the long spear's trembling became more and more intense. At a certain moment, it suddenly calmed down. However, if one looked carefully, they could barely see that at the tip of the spear, the air was constantly escaping, and the space was distorted beyond recognition. The long spear was silent for a moment, and then an intense purple light bloomed. It was so dazzling that people couldn't help but squint their eyes. Man and spear is one. Spear path killing. Whoosh! The tip of the spear trembled violently, and afterimages flickered. Following that, the air suddenly exploded, and a purple spear shadow suddenly burst out. The moment it left the body, waves of air spread out. Just the recoil caused by the impact was enough to make the caster, AI Tianxing, stagger back, leaving shallow footprints on the ground. Zhoumo's hands that were forming a seal suddenly froze, and the black sea behind her suddenly surged violently. It was like boiling water, and terrifying ripples spread out. Black Demon True Hand. Rumble. A huge black hand stretched out from the surging black sea. The huge hand was covered with mysterious and obscure crimson runes, like bloodstains. Following that, the bloodstains seemed to have the nature of fire, and they stood up on the surface of the huge hand. The enormous black hand broke through the air like a bolt of lightning. Wherever it passed, the threads of blood that seeped out turned into threads of energy, directly causing the hard ground and space to be torn apart, forming numerous cracks that were difficult to see with the naked eye. The sharp tearing scene caused quite a number of people to tremble in fear. On the square, the bright purple light and the deep black hand occupied half the sky. Both of them contained an extremely sharp edge, causing space to ripple and cracks to spread. The terrifying destructive power caused the faces of the people in the stands to be filled with shock and fear. It was really difficult for them to imagine that someone with the strength of a half-step, 9th level heavenly stage could launch such a terrifying attack. If it were them, just the energy that leaked out would likely be enough to seriously injure them on the spot. A battle of this level had already surpassed the boundary of the half-step, 9th level heavenly stage. It was truly terrifying. The moment the purple spear shadow and the black hand were about to collide, everyone's hearts involuntarily rose. Who would emerge victorious in such a terrifying confrontation? While everyone's hearts were filled with anticipation and uneasiness, the purple-colored body and the large black-colored hand finally collided violently in the air in the next instant. However, just as everyone covered their ears and waited for the earth-shaking explosion that was about to resound, the collision in the sky, strangely, did not emit the slightest sound. Numerous stunned gazes were slowly lifted, after which they looked at the dark black and pale purple liquid in the sky that were corroding each other like two clusters of different colored liquid. Although this exchange was silent, those sharp-eyed individuals were able to discover that the space had become extremely distorted at the point where the two frightening energies came into contact. At a glance, it gave one an illusory and strange feeling. A slight hissing sound was vaguely emitted from the eroding energy in the air amidst the silence of the entire place. Dark black and pale purple were just like two clusters of enormous clouds that covered the sky above the square. This seemingly peaceful exchange was actually filled with the intention of swallowing the other party. As the purple spear shadow shot out, AI Tianxing seemed to have been drained of all the spirit energy in his body. His entire body collapsed, his face pale and his chest heaving up and down violently. Nietion's eyes were fixed on the two enormous balls of energy in midair. Obviously, this was his last and most powerful attack. The outcome of this battle would be determined by this. Countless gazes paused in the air. For a time, the entire arena was waiting for the result of the clash between the two clusters of energy, which contained an extremely frightening destructive force. Chapter 467. A draw in front of everyone's eyes. The two dark black and pale purple energies in the sky, which were repeatedly swallowing and entangling with each other, suddenly began to fluctuate intensely, like boiling water. Immediately, the two clusters of energy suddenly swelled in front of everyone's doubtful eyes. Numerous gazes were dumbfounded as they stared at the two enormous balls of energy that had suddenly swelled strangely. For some unknown reason, they felt a sense of unease. When the expansion reached a certain point, the two enormous balls of energy suddenly stopped moving. A strange deep luster suddenly appeared like a tiny light spot. Following the appearance of the strange luster, the space suddenly began to fluctuate. The strongest attacks of AI, Tianxing, and Zhou Mo seemed to have faintly undergone some changes when they came into contact and devoured each other. This situation caused even the two of them to feel extremely confused and astonished. The light spot rapidly expanded within the two balls of energy. In the end, the light spot became more and more dazzling, while the fluctuations in the space also became more and more intense. An increasingly intense feeling of unease rose in everyone's hearts. On the high platform, the various clan leaders frowned as they stared at the energy contact that had undergone some changes. A high-level battle skill could allow one to unleash an attack that was several times stronger than one's own for a short period of time. However, the attacks of the two seemed to have exceeded the limits of their own strength, especially when they collided. Generally speaking, this kind of situation was impossible to occur. However, if the energy and attributes contained in two moves coincidentally met in a special environment, there would occasionally be all kinds of unforeseen changes when they collided. However, these unforeseen changes were extremely coincidental. Looking at the previous situation, it was clear that some strange changes had occurred when AI, Tianxing, and Zhoumo's attacks were devouring each other. The various clan leaders frowned as they stared at the increasingly dazzling and enormous light spot within the balls of energy. A moment later, as if they had sensed something, their expressions abruptly changed. One of the MCs from the Imperial family suddenly stood up. With a move of his body, he disappeared from the high platform. At the same time, the other clan leaders also rapidly shot out. The instant they disappeared, the two light spots in the sky were like balloons that had been punctured. An unusually berserk energy immediately filled the sky. Boom! An enormous mushroom cloud rose into the sky as a glaring light scattered down from the sky. While the natural energy was in a frenzy, the dark black and faint purple energy clusters were finally unable to withstand the unusual movement of the energy. Immediately, a thunder-like explosion accompanied by an extremely frightening storm swept out from the battle stage. Wherever the storm passed, the space trembled. Below the battle platform, countless people stared in horror at the rapidly expanding energy storm. Even though they were far away, they could still feel the terror within. If the storm spread over, not many of them would be able to survive. Retreat! It was unknown who shouted, but the crowd quickly became restless and retreated one after another, their faces in horror as they looked at the tsunami-like energy impact. Space Lock, the host of the royal family, shouted. At the same time, the leaders of the various clans quickly flew into the air above the battle platform. Powerful spiritual energy poured down, forming an energy shield. In that empty space, the energy barrier enveloped the entire battle stage. The energy ripples within began to ripple like water, after which they wiggled with lightning speed and finally completely solidified. The space above the square, along with the spreading energy storm, was completely frozen. Although the energy storm was stopped by the experts, the situation was too sudden. No matter how powerful they were still caught off guard. As a result, two waves of energy escaped. These two waves of energy followed the faint remnant connection between the two attacks and struck the bodies of Yi Tianxing and Zhou Mo, who were caught off guard, with lightning-like speed under numerous shocked gazes. A mouthful of fresh blood was spat out from their mouths when the wild and violent energy violently collided. Immediately, their bodies rubbed against the ground as they violently shot backwards. Finally, they appeared like two black lines as they were smashed out of the battleground and shot into the two viewing galleries, causing a commotion. The expressions of the various experts changed slightly. After being devoured and eroded by each other, the wild and violent force created by the two forces was much stronger than before. At this moment, Zhou Mo and Yi Tianxing were both arrows at the end of their flight. One could easily imagine the consequences of such a violent collision. Break! The experts' faces were ice cold. With a cold cry, the energy barrier shrunk rapidly. Finally, it turned into a speck of light and disappeared. The frightening energy storm was also destroyed. After destroying the energy storm, clan leader E and clan leader Zhou rushed out at the same time. They rushed in the direction where the two people had been shot. A moment later, they each carried two people in tattered clothes. Their bodies were covered in blood. They appeared in the destroyed arena. Everyone around the square hurriedly stood up. They looked at Yi Tianxing and Zhou Mo, who had already completely fainted and secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Soon after, they bitterly smiled. Given the strength of these two crazy fellows, it would not be a problem for them to advance. Moreover, this was not the final battle for the champion. Was there a need to do this? However, the previous battle, everyone smacked their lips as they recalled the thrill of the energy storm earlier. Only then did they realize that their heartbeats had become much faster. On the tall platform, another royal family elder appeared in the arena in a flash. As he gazed at the ruined arena, he helplessly shook his head. After so many years, the Yin City Guild seemed to have caused the most damage. Mr. Huangfu, now that both of them are unconscious, who is the winner of this match? Clan leader Yi asked with a bitter smile as he looked at the ruined arena. The others also shook their heads helplessly. Mr. Huangfu was a prince of the imperial family. He had a prominent status. Therefore, even clan leader Yi and the leaders of the various factions had to be respectful to him. Huangfu Qiren frowned slightly. It was difficult for him to decide. According to the rules, both of them are considered to have left the arena. Moreover, they are both unconscious. It is not clear who is the winner. That's not enough. Since both of them left the arena at the same time, let's consider it a draw. Huangfu Qiren nodded slightly and looked around at the crowd. But with their current condition, I'm afraid they won't be able to participate in the next match. Clan leader Zhou smiled bitterly. Huangfu Qiren was also helpless. According to the rules, neither of them would be considered to have advanced if they had not won 2 matches. However, with their current injuries, even if they were given half a month, they would not be able to recover. AI Tianxing and Zhou Mo were both seriously injured and unconscious. According to the rules, they would have to stop advancing in the Flame City Guild. The Flame City Guild has its own rules. It can't stop indefinitely. This is unfair to the others. They can only blame their bad luck. Huangfu Qiren sighed softly and said, "Then let's wait for them to recover and choose one of them to eliminate." Clan leader Yi and clan leader Mo sighed when they heard this. They should have been fully confident in advancing. But in the end, things had turned out this way. Mr. Huangfu, clan leader, he wanted to fight for a chance. He felt that AI Tianxing and Zhou Mo had both displayed absolute strength. If one of them was eliminated, it would be a loss for Great Yin City. However, just as he spoke, he suddenly felt that the atmosphere had changed. He raised his head and saw that everyone's expressions were somewhat strange. At this moment, not only him, but even Mu Huangfu Qiren and the other leaders of the major factions seemed to have noticed something. They seemed to have only paid attention to the destruction of this battle and seemed to have neglected the other battle. Buzz, an indescribable fluctuation, faintly spread out. The faces of the people in the air changed drastically once again. Oh no, I forgot about these two. Everyone suddenly lowered their heads. Soon after, their pupils shrank slightly. They saw the blood-red energy barrier that enveloped the entire arena suddenly shrink violently. In the next instant, it suddenly expanded back to its original state. At the same time, waves of blood-red air spread out continuously with the energy barrier as the center. The blood-red air waves were much quieter than the energy storm from before. They spread out calmly, but the space around the blood-red air waves became distorted and illusory. Chapter 468. All 4 elements injured. The huge square fell into silence as everyone stared blankly at the spreading blood-red shockwaves. Even though they couldn't feel any energy fluctuations, An indescribable sense of uneasiness rose in their hearts. These shockwaves had no trajectory or direction. They were suppressed to the extreme before erupting. In an instant, the power broke through all restraints, including the two spellcasters. Heaven and earth seemed to be disintegrating. Time and space seemed to be collapsing. The earth collapsed instantly, as if it was the end of the world. A terrible storm almost instantly filled the sky, leaving no place for anyone to hide. Everyone retreat. Huang Fuqiren was the first to react. His expression changed drastically, and he shouted. The extremely powerful spiritual power in his body burst out. At the same time, clan leader E and the other powerhouses also burst out their spiritual power to block the blood-red airwave. However, they were still a step too late. When the combined energy shield fell, the first blood-red shockwave had already spread out and spread towards the crowd. Pucci. As the blood-red shockwave spread out, a large number of figures fell down. Fortunately, the ones at the front were some high-level elders of various clans, and they resisted most of the shockwaves. There were no casualties. As the shockwaves continued to spread, those who were hit by the blood-red shockwaves vomited blood and fell down one after another. The blood-red shockwave spread to half of the crowd before finally exhausting its power and dissipating. Outside the battle stage, it was a mess and there were constant screams. Although some powerhouses decisively resisted most of the shockwaves and didn't cause any casualties, there were still nearly 100 people who were seriously injured. Many of them even fainted. Even some of the experts in the front row were coughing up blood. They had suffered serious injuries. Everyone looked at the gradually dissipating blood-red energy shield in horror. They found it hard to believe what had happened inside. How could the destructive power of the two be so terrifying? The destructive power of a real ninth stage, heavenly realm powerhouse couldn't be so great. Under everyone's gaze, the blood-red energy shield gradually dissipated, revealing the scene inside. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air again. The entire fighting stage had been destroyed beyond recognition. There was almost no place left intact. In terms of destructive power, it was even more terrifying than what Yi Tianxing and Zhou Mo had done. Qin Feng. The members of the Song clan looked at the battle platform, and their expressions changed drastically. Their voices were filled with unconcealable worry. On the fighting ring, Qin Feng's clothes were torn. His body was covered in blood as he lay in the rubble. His face was pale, and his breath was weak. Obviously, he had been severely injured. However, in front of him, Lu En's figure was standing straight like a spear. Other than his pale face, the rest of his body was in perfect condition. He did not seem to have suffered any major injuries. Lu En won. Soon, the crowd was in an uproar. They clearly saw the situation on the fighting ring and understood that Lu En from the Mo clan had won. Forbidden techniques are indeed terrifying. Someone sighed. Big brother Qin Feng. Song Shue's body trembled. If not for Song Yuan holding her back, she would have rushed forward. Clan leader Mo stood in the air and lowered his head to look at the two people below. His face was filled with pride. Mr. Huangfu, can you announce the winner of this battle? He asked. Huangfu nodded. His eyes imperceptibly glanced at Qin Feng, who was lying on the ground. He cleared his throat, and his loud and clear voice spread to every corner of the square. This round, the Mo family wins. Advance to the top 7. Puffed. However, just as he finished speaking, Lu En suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His pale face suddenly turned pale, and his stable breath also collapsed at this moment. His body collapsed with a loud crash under the dumbfounded gazes of the crowd. This was also a draw? Huang Fuqiren and the leaders of the other clans also looked at this scene in shock. It turned out that Lu En was only holding on. At their level, they could naturally see how severely injured Lu En was. He was not any weaker than AI, Tianxing, and Zhou Mo. Now, he had fallen into a coma. This clan leader Mo looked embarrassed. Huang Fuqiren was also a little embarrassed. They had just announced the winner, but such a big mistake had occurred. Looks like it's another draw. Clan leader Yi chuckled and sighed in relief. Half of the top 8 had fallen, and there was no way to continue the competition. However, just as he finished speaking, an accident happened again, and the smile on his face froze. Cough, cough. Qin Feng, who had originally fainted on the ground, suddenly coughed out a mouthful of blood. After a bout of intense coughing, he trembled as he climbed up. His face was deathly pale, but his figure firmly stood there. Huang Fuqiren looked at the situation but did not immediately announce the result. He could see that Qin Feng's situation was also very bad. He was just hanging on by a breath. Qin Feng's situation was similar to what Huang Fuqiren had guessed. Although he was still standing, his consciousness was blurred. He could only see the ruins in front of him and Luan lying not far away. In his mind, a wisp of mental energy seeped out and turned into a sharp blade, shooting towards Luan. Brat, you dare. Clan leader Mo sensed the situation and his expression changed drastically. He quickly stood in front of Luan. Although mental energy was invisible, with their strength and Qin Feng's lack of energy to hide his mental energy, it was naturally detected immediately. However, the sharp blade disappeared when it was 5 meters away from Lu and before clan leader Mo could make a move. At the same time, Qin Feng could not hold on and fell. You old bastard. Before his consciousness fell into darkness, Qin Feng could not help but curse in his heart. He had held on for more than 10 breaths. But this old man did not announce the result. With Qin Feng's fall, there was no doubt that it was another draw. This might be the most intense competition in the history of Flame City. In the previous competitions, even the final championship battle did not have such destructive power. Huang Fuqiren and the other clan leaders rushed back to the high platform. The 4 heavily injured people were sent back to their respective clans to treat their injuries. These youngsters are too hard-working. Clan leader, he could not help but smile bitterly when he saw that half of the 4 battle stages had been destroyed. The other clan leaders also shook their heads and smiled. Clearly, whether it was the intensity of the battle or the number of people who would advance to the next round, they had all exceeded their expectations. However, it is also a kind of fortune to be able to watch such an exciting battle. The quality of this competition is indeed better than before. My great Flame City has a successor, Huang Fuqiren said. But with this, it seems that Flame City will not be able to continue, clan leader he said. All 4 of their peak experts were heavily injured, and only half of the top 8 remained. How could they continue to compete? Mr. Huangfu, I think the rules should be changed. I think so too. Rules are rules. If both sides are injured, they can only blame themselves for being weak. Yes, if the rules are changed, it will be unfair to the other participants. Chapter 469. Cultivation. Huang Fuqiren frowned. After a moment of silence, he said, I'm afraid that these 4 fellows won't be able to fight for some time. Hearing this, the others nodded. The 4 of them were severely injured. Even if their respective families used up all their resources, they would not be able to recover to their peak in a short period of time. Flame City's guild chooses the strongest to enter the Heavenly Secret Pavilion. This is the motto of Flame City's guild. Everyone is well aware of the strength of these 4. It is not worth it for any one of them to be eliminated. Patriarch Zhou said, moreover, with only 4 people left, such a competition is meaningless. It goes against Flame City's motto of choosing the strongest. Huang Fuqiren frowned. This was indeed troublesome. If 4 people were defeated in the quarterfinals, even if they continued the competition, it would be meaningless. I never thought that things would turn out like this. Huang Fuqiren sighed and said, we still need to report this matter to the emperor and let him make a decision. Just as he finished speaking, someone flew over from afar and whispered a few words in a Huang Fuqiren's ear. The latter nodded and said to the various faction leaders, I've just received a message from the emperor. This year's Heavenly Secret Token competition has ended. The remaining participants have all advanced. 1 week later, it is up to you whether you wish to participate in the ranking competition. The slots to enter the Heavenly Secret Pavilion were all taken. As for the competition after the quarterfinals, It was more of a training exercise for the various factions and families to train their disciples. It was a competition between the peak experts of the younger generation. This competition was the true essence of Flame City's guilds and was also the focus of the various factions. In other words, the competition to reach the summit was a competition between the disciples to determine the true number one person of the younger generation. This was a battle of honor. To the various factions and families, entering the top 7 was the most important. This was related to the fate of their respective factions and families. However, once one entered the top 7, they would have the qualifications to participate in the ranking competition. This was a competition between the peak experts of the younger generation. However, in this situation, the participation of each faction in the ranking competition would depend on their own wishes. With only 1 week, I'm afraid that they won't be able to recover from their injuries. Patriarch Zhou said, breaking through one's limits and challenging oneself. If one wants to be stronger than others, one must constantly surpass oneself. For them, this is also a kind of experience. Huang Fuqiren coughed softly and said, let's see who among the 8 of them can sit on the throne. The winner will be qualified to challenge Yi Wu of the Yi family. Everyone laughed bitterly when they heard this. Huang Fuqiren's words were true, but under such heavy injuries, who would still have the strength to fight? Based on this battle alone, everyone knew that these 4 were the strongest of the top 8. Now that they were all injured, it would be extremely difficult for them to recover in a week. Even if they participated in the ranking competition, it would be very difficult for them to get a good ranking, let alone challenge Yi Wu, who was even more terrifying. Looking at their expressions, Huang Fuqiren knew what they were thinking. He smiled and said, everyone, you don't have to worry about this. His Majesty has already spoken. Those who participate in the ranking competition will have the right to enter the Spirit River to cultivate. Hearing this, everyone's expressions changed and immediately surged with joy. If they could enter the Spirit River to cultivate, the situation would be much better. The Spirit River was a wonderful place in the depths of the Imperial Palace. It was rich in spirit chi and flourishing with medicinal herbs. The Spirit River water had been nourished by countless medicinal herbs of heaven and earth. It was rich in spirit chi and contained extremely strong spirituality and medicinal properties. It was an excellent place to recuperate. Historically, only those who had made great contributions to the Great Yin Empire had the opportunity to enter the Spirit River. Will His Majesty really open the Spirit River? Patriarch Yi asked in an uncertain tone. Of course. Huang Fuqiren chuckled and said, in fact, the imperial family has been secretly watching these 2 battles. They have just sent an oral order to have the opportunity to enter the Spirit River to heal. It seems that the imperial family is quite satisfied with these little fellows. Hearing Huang Fuqiren's words, the clan leaders heaved a sigh of relief. These few people were the most outstanding disciples of their respective clans. Today, they had suffered such serious injuries. Even if they recovered in the future, there might be some sequelae. If that was the case, it would be unbearable for the various clans. However, this worry could be eliminated now. With the Spirit River's treatment, any hidden injuries would be removed. Some lucky fellows could even use it to improve their strength again. Of course, it was just a saying to improve one's strength. This did not mean that the Spirit River did not have such an effect. It was just that the time was too short, and their injuries were extremely serious. In just a few days, it would be good if they could recover more than half of their strength. It was somewhat impossible for them to completely recover to their peak and improve again. The day after tomorrow is the day the Spirit River opens. Everyone can bring those little fellows here. As for how much they can recover in these few days, it will depend on their own luck. After saying that, Huang Fuqiren did not say anything else. His figure flashed, and he swept into the air and flew quickly toward the Imperial Palace. Everyone looked at each other and didn't say anything else. They just casually talked about the upcoming matches and left the place. The others also sighed for a while before dispersing. Looking at their expressions before they left, it was obvious that the news of today's battle would spread throughout Great Yin City. As for Qin Feng and Luan, who were originally not very famous, their prestige would be on par with AI Tianqing. No one would dare to underestimate them anymore. A day had passed since the finals of the top 8. During this day, the news of the two battles spread everywhere. The news of the Song clan's son-in-law and the distant relative of the Mo clan also became more and more popular. In particular, the final result of all four of them being injured caused everyone to sigh endlessly. While people were discussing, they felt somewhat helpless in their hearts. These four youths were the top figures of the younger generation. In particular, the destruction caused by the last two battles could be said to be terrifying. Close to 100 people were injured. While the outside world was filled with discussions, the people involved were still lying on their beds in their respective clans. Some of them were still unconscious even now. In the backyard of the Song clan, Qin Feng's face was pale as he walked out with Song Shue's help. He had already regained consciousness after being unconscious for a day. The Song clan had used all kinds of medicine to treat his injuries, but only managed to slightly improve his condition, which was slightly better than the other three. Song Yuan walked over and looked at Qin Feng's pale face as she faintly said, "You fought too hard back then. You should have just admitted defeat. Why did you have to force yourself to continue? Want to be fine if you won the next round?" Qin Feng smiled bitterly. How could he admit defeat? What do you plan to do next? Song Yuan looked at Qin Feng and said, "Our Song clan has already obtained a spot to enter the Heavenly Secret Pavilion and has also crushed the conspiracy of the other clans. Hence, you don't have to participate in the following matches." Chapter 470. Setting up a banquet. Although your injuries are serious, don't worry. The Song family will definitely help you recover to your peak, Song Yuan said. Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. Why would I give up a chance to enter the Spirit River? Moreover, the ranking competition is not a battle of life and death. I won't force myself. But even if you enter the Spirit River to heal, you won't be able to recover to your peak in just a few days. It's useless even if you participate. After a pause, Song Yuan's gaze suddenly became strange. Qin Feng, why do you want to participate in the ranking competition? You don't care about these titles, do you? I don't care. Qin Feng nodded. But I'm very interested in the champion's reward. Song Yuan was stunned. She looked at Qin Feng in confusion. The longevity flower. Qin Feng did not hide anything. I really need it. Originally, he did not plan to participate in the following competition and was not interested in the so-called champion. However, he happened to know that the champion's reward was a longevity flower. This flower was a precious medicinal ingredient. Usually, it was used by people who were nearing the end of their lifespan. Logically speaking, Qin Feng was young and needed this. However, the demon eye had told him that if he could obtain the longevity flower and the exotic desolate spiritual energy, Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi would be able to recover their consciousness. Therefore, he had to obtain the longevity flower. And to obtain the longevity flower, he had to become the champion. The longevity flower is one of the rewards for the champion. Song Yuan widened her eyes and looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. You want to fight for the champion? That's the only way I can obtain the longevity flower, isn't it? Qin Feng smiled. Seeing that Song Yuan was still trying to stop him, he said, "The following battles are not for the Song family, but for myself. You don't have to stop me because it's useless. Is the longevity flower that important to you? More important than your life?" Rolling her beautiful eyes at Qin Feng, Song Yuan said softly, "Although the longevity flower is precious, it doesn't seem to be of much use to you. You're still young, so what use would you have for it?" "Not my business." Qin Feng smiled and didn't want to talk about it anymore. "I'm worried that something might happen to you," Song Yuan said worriedly. "Don't worry. The person who can take my life hasn't appeared yet. How is it? Are you feeling better?" Song Su walked in from outside the courtyard and handed over a bottle of medicinal pills, saying, "These are some high-grade medicinal pills for treating injuries. It should be of great help to your injuries." Qin Feng glanced at it and didn't try to be pretentious. He directly put it away. "Brother, he's going to participate in the next competition." He's going to fight for the championship, Song Yuan said. Song Su was stunned. He looked at Qin Feng in surprise. After a while, he nodded and said, Brother Qin Feng should have his own plans. Since that's the case, we shouldn't stop them. Brother, why do you say that? Little Yuan. Song Su shook his head and said seriously, since Brother Qin Feng wants to do this, he must have his own considerations. He has sacrificed too much for the Song family. What we need to do is to support him unconditionally. Thank you. Qin Feng nodded. Brother Qin Feng, you want to participate in the next competition. We support you, but there are some things you must know. Song Su stared at Qin Feng and said seriously, if you want to win the championship, you don't just have to defeat AI, Tianxing, Luin, Zhou Mo, and the others. You must win first place among the 8 people who advance to the next round. Then, you need to challenge Yi Dance of the Yi family and defeat her to become the champion. You think I'm not qualified to challenge Yi Dance? Qin Feng asked rhetorically. It's not that you're not qualified. It's just that you don't have much hope. Song Su shook his head and said, even I don't know how terrifying Yi Dance is. I can only say that AI Tianxing has no chance of winning against her. You should know that you and AI Tianxing's combat strength should be about the same. Although you broke Lu An's forbidden technique, I don't think you're a match for Yi Dance. By the way, Yi Dance learned Yihua's ability to control fire. If we were to ask who among the younger generation in Great Yin City is the best at playing with fire, it would be Yi Dance. However, this is not her most powerful technique, so she rarely uses the power of fire. Therefore, people pay more attention to Yihua when it comes to controlling fire. Although it's a little discouraging to say this, reality is cruel. Yi Dance is far more powerful than you think. If AI Tianxing defeats you in the end, Yi Dance naturally won't do anything because they will be the champion. However, if it's someone else, it's a different story. After listening to Song Su's words, Qin Feng fell silent. He could feel that Yi Dance was a huge mountain in the hearts of the younger generation in Great Yin City. Even AI Tianxing, Zhou Mo, and Luin did not think that they could defeat Yi Dance. She is indeed very powerful. Qin Feng smiled. He insisted on participating in the competition not because he was blindly arrogant, but because this was his personality. No matter how strong his opponent was, he would not back down. If he did not fight, how would he know that there was no hope? Yi Dance was indeed very powerful, but it did not mean that he did not have any hope. After chatting with Song Su, Qin Feng gained a deeper understanding of Yi Dance. However, he would not back down. The path of an expert was to overcome the impossible. Only by constantly surpassing one's limits and surpassing oneself could one continue to grow, transform, and cleanse oneself to become a true expert. Qin Feng helped the Song clan obtain the Tianji token. After he woke up, not only did the Song clan send him various medicinal pills, but they also held a huge celebratory banquet in the evening. The Song clan was in a state of jubilation. The mountain that had been pressing on their hearts had been removed. Everyone's faces were brimming with relaxed smiles. Even some of the usually old-fashioned and strict elders were smiling like flowers. As the great benefactor who helped the Song clan obtain a place to enter the Tianji Pavilion, Qin Feng naturally received the highest level of treatment. From the ordinary servants to the clan leader and the elders, they were all extremely courteous to him. This time was different. Back then, these old fellows were only pressured by Song Yun. However, this time was different. They had truly acknowledged Qin Feng from the bottom of their hearts. Big brother Qin Feng, eat something. Song Shui brought over a plate of fruits, smiling happily. Qin Feng smiled at her and pulled her to sit beside him. Big brother Qin Feng, I can't sit here. Song Shui helplessly said. Her small hands uneasily clutched her dress. Although she was also a young miss of the Song clan, she did not have any status. In the past, she would not have the qualifications to participate in such banquets. This could be seen from the fact that Qin Feng had been harassed by the guards when he first entered. It's fine. With me here, no one will dare to say anything. Qin Feng gently smiled as he patted Song Shui's head. The main reason he joined the Flame City Guild was to help Song Shui. If there was no improvement after doing so much, what was the point of him working so hard? Chapter 471. Entering the spirit river, Qin Feng's actions naturally fell into the ears of the Song family's upper echelons. However, this time, no one was displeased. Some of the elders looked at the two of them, stroking their beards and nodding secretly. Xiao Shui, as the young miss of the Song family, you naturally have the right to sit here. Song Yuan sat beside Song Shui and smiled. Brother Qin Feng, I really have to thank you this time. Come, let's not talk about gratitude. Let's drink. You're injured, so let's drink tea instead of wine. Song Su and some of the outstanding juniors of the Song family walked over, and he drank 3 cups of wine in a row. After chatting with Song Su and the others for a while, and exchanging pleasantries with Song Yun and the other elders, Qin Feng found an opportunity to slip away. He, who always liked peace and quiet, could not stand such a situation. Returning to the backyard, he sat on the lawn and looked at the bright moon hanging in the sky. A cool breeze blew past, clearing his muddled mind. Now that the Song family had obtained a spot to enter the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, Song Shui did not need to marry into the Yu family. According to the original plan, Qin Feng did not plan to continue the competition. However, with the unexpected situation, the longevity flower changed his original plan. The exotic, desolate spiritual qi could speed up his sister and Gong Xiaoxi's awakening, but who knew how long it would take? With the longevity flower, they could wake up faster. How could he give up? He had just reunited with his elder sister not long ago, but she was already killed. This was the greatest grief in Qin Feng's heart. He had been thinking about reviving his elder sister all the time. However, although the wood energy was effective, the progress was simply too slow. Therefore, this time he had to seize the opportunity to revive Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi. Old Mo, are you sure that the longevity flower and the exotic, desolate spiritual qi can revive my sister and little Shi? Qin Feng asked. There's an 80 to 90% chance that they can wake up in the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, the demon eye replied. After receiving confirmation, Qin Feng heaved a sigh of relief. Now it was up to him. Qin Feng. It was not known when Song Yun had arrived and sat down beside Qin Feng. Clan leader Song. I've heard that Flame City's rewards this time are bountiful. Qin Feng laughed. Not bad. Song Yun nodded with a smile. He looked at Qin Feng and said, this is also to increase the viewability of the later stages of the competition. Otherwise, as you can see, most of the family forces are only focused on the Tianji token competition. They won't pay much attention to the later stages of the competition. However, with the allure of these bountiful rewards, the various powers and clans will pay close attention to it. The rewards from the royal family are not ordinary. This is extremely beneficial to any power. That's why you want to participate. Song Yun said, Little Yuan told me why you want to participate in the next competition. Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded. Little friend, although we are indebted to you and should support you without reservation, I still want to say that you'd better give up on the idea of becoming the champion. Song Yun said in a serious tone. Is it because of e-dance? Qin Feng asked. That's right. Song Yun looked at Qin Feng and said, based on your fight with Luan, you shouldn't be holding back, right? However, with just that kind of strength, you're no match for e-dance. Qin Feng's expression froze for a moment. A moment later, he softly said, just how strong is e-dance of the Yi family? Has she truly reached the 9th heaven realm? That's not impossible. Song Yun nodded slightly, his tone containing unconcealable praise. E-dance of the Yi family is a cultivation genius rarely seen in 100 years in Great Yin City and even in the entire Great Yin Empire. At the age of 20, she completed bone strengthening and entered spirit channeling. In less than 2 years, she crossed spirit channeling, minor heaven, and reached the half-step 9th heaven realm. This was more than a year ago. It's hard to say if she hasn't broken through to the 9th heaven realm yet. Hearing this, Qin Feng's expression became a little dignified. Even someone like Song Yun praised her so much. This e-dance was definitely a terrifying figure. Seeing Qin Feng fall silent, Songyun paused slightly and said, "Do you know that half a year ago, she fought with a ninth heaven realm master of the Yi family for hundreds of moves and was not defeated?" Hearing this, Qin Feng's pupil shrank. She fought with a real ninth heaven realm master and was not defeated, and it was more than half a year ago. Just how strong was Yi Dance now? With his current strength, he could barely contend with such strength, but it was still too difficult to defeat her. It seems that I have to break through again, Qin Feng thought to himself. Only you, AI, Tianxing, Luan, and Zhou Mo want to participate in the final ranking tournament. The others know that they have no chance and have chosen to give up. Song Tsing patted Qin Feng on the shoulder and said earnestly, "Whatever you want to do, the Song family will support you, but you must be prepared for failure. Well, rest early. You will enter the Spirit River tomorrow. Perhaps you can take this opportunity to adjust your state." The next morning, Qin Feng, led by Song Songyun, met up with the Yi family, Mo family, and Zhou family. Then, led by Huang Fuqi Run, they entered the Spirit River in the depths of the Imperial Palace. In the depths of the Imperial Palace, there was a small bamboo forest. This was a treasure land with extremely rich world energy, several times richer than outside. Cultivating here for a day was equivalent to cultivating for 3 days outside. In the center of the bamboo forest, there was a small river. The water was clear and sparkling, and under the refraction of light, it emitted a 7-colored light. On the surface of the river, there was a mist rising. If one were to look carefully, they would discover that the mist was actually formed by dense spiritual energy. It contained extremely pure spiritual energy, which was of great help to one's cultivation. Around the Spirit River and in the water, there were many medicinal herbs of various grades. These medicinal herbs were irrigated by the Spirit River and then fed back to the Spirit River, making their medicinal properties pure. The Spirit River was not small, and with the mist rising from the river, one could only vaguely see the outline of the Spirit River. Huang Fuqi Run formed a strange seal beside the Spirit River. An array of lights swept out. Then, a faint 7-colored light film suddenly appeared above the Spirit River. The light film squirmed, and a shallow crack appeared. The Spirit River is protected by a boundary. You can only leave, but not enter. Once you enter, you will have to rely on your own means. Huang Fuqi Feng opened up an opening and said to Qin Feng and the others in a deep voice, "The water of the Spirit River is not ordinary water. It contains the 9 heavens spiritual liquid. It has a pretty good effect in treating injuries, but at the same time, it will also create a compressing force on the body. If it is compressed for a long period of time, it will cause different damages to your body. If anyone can't bear it, come out immediately. Otherwise, you'll have to bear all the consequences. So, you only have one chance. Once you come out, you will not have another chance to enter. Now go in." Huang Fuqi Run shouted, and the seal in his hand suddenly burst out with a dazzling light. The light shot onto the light film, and the crack suddenly tore a few meters wide. Suddenly, rich world energy spread out from the crack, and it made one's spirit rise. Qin Feng, Zhou Mo, AI, Tianxing, Luan, and the others did not hesitate and jumped into the crack. With a few plopping sounds, their figures disappeared from the sight of Elder Mu and the others. As the few of them entered, Huang Fuqi Run heaved a sigh of relief, and the crack slowly closed. Chapter 472. Record as they poured into the Spirit River. Their figures disappeared from the eyes of Huang Fuqiren and the others. The Spirit River had a unique magical effect. The boundary outside not only had the effect of blocking, but also completely isolated the outside world from the Spirit River. They could not sense anything that happened inside. I don't know how long these young people can last. The best result in the past seems to be the little girl from the Yi family, right? Huang Fuqiren said with a smile. Hearing this, clan leader Yi also smiled with some pride. That girl Xiao Wu lasted for 3 days before she came out. The Spirit River has a very terrifying compression force. Ordinary people can at most last for about a day, and those who are more talented can only last for 2 days. That girl Xiao Wu lasted for 3 days, which has already broken the previous record, Huang Fuqiren said with a smile. Huang Fuqiren said with a smile. The admiration in his laughter was undisguised, causing the others to feel rather envious. Although the Yi family never participated in the battles between the major forces, their overall strength was the strongest among all the family forces. Presumably, their relationship with the imperial family was also a factor, especially in recent years. The Yi family had produced a freak like Yi Wu. It was said that the emperor doted on her very much. With this relationship, it was difficult for the Yi family not to be strong. This was something that all the other forces envied. It was their fault for not having an outstanding disciple that the emperor valued. I don't know if we can see that girl Xiao Wu fight this time. Huang Fuqiren smiled and said with envy, I heard that the emperor personally taught Xiao Wu an extremely strange technique. Clan leader, you should have heard of it, right? Clan leader, Yi smiled bitterly and said, that girl hid it very well. She didn't even tell me, her father. Every time I asked, she would use the emperor to stop me. Mr. Huangfu, what technique did the emperor teach Xiao Wu? Huang Fuqiren shook his head and sighed. I don't know the details, but I heard that the emperor wants to take Xiao Wu as a personal disciple. This time, he seems to be teaching her a unique technique of the imperial family. Only the two of them know what it is. Clan leader Yi's eyes suddenly lit up, and even the others could not help but look envious. The emperor of the great Yin Empire was proficient in martial arts and cherished talents the most. He only had 3 personal disciples in his entire life. His eldest disciple had wandered the continent 100 years ago and was said to have become an overlord. A few decades ago, when the Chaoxian Empire invaded the Great Yin Empire, it seemed to be this existence that resolved the war. The second disciple was the #1 general in the Great Yin Empire 30 years ago. He had made countless contributions in his life. The third disciple was the current National Protector General and was also known as the #1 general. It can be seen that the emperor's 3 disciples have great achievements, and Yi Wu was very likely to be chosen by the emperor as his 4th personal disciple. If this was true, it could be foreseen that she would have great achievements in the future. With the current strength of these 4 young people, I'm afraid that even if they recover to their peak, they won't be able to force out all of little Wu's trump cards. I'm afraid we won't be able to see that girl fight for real this time. Huang Fuqiren sighed regretfully. Even he was envious of the emperor's ultimate technique and wanted to witness it. When the others heard this, they nodded. Based on the current strength of the 4 young people, it seemed that they really didn't have the ability to fight against Yi Wu. The 4 of them are fighting for the #1 position, but whoever lasts until the end will definitely win by a lot. How can they challenge Yi Wu? Song Sanyan shook his head and smiled bitterly. The others also nodded and explained. This was a dead end. Yi Wu was not on the same level as these 4 young people. Not necessarily. Huang Fuqiren shook his head and said, I heard that the emperor is also considering the situation. A one-sided battle is not what the emperor wants to see. What does the emperor mean? The emperor's will is not something that we can guess. Huang Fuqiren stroked his beard and shook his head. It shouldn't be carried out according to the previous competition rules. As for what kind of competition it will be, we don't know now. When the others heard this, they smiled helplessly. The Yin City Guild had never been reduced to such a state before. By the way, brother, where did that girl Xiao Wu go? I haven't seen her for many days since she left Her Royal Highness. Huang Fuqiren asked. Clan leader Yi shook his head and said with a helpless look, that girl is now very independent, but I heard that she is helping Her Royal Highness find someone. Find someone? Everyone was stunned. Her Royal Highness asked Yi Wu to find someone. This was a strange thing. Who knows? My girl is with Her Royal Highness, so it's expected that she will do anything. Everyone nodded, but Huang Fuqiren frowned slightly. He held an important position in the palace, so he had heard some news. It was said that Her Royal Highness met someone outside and wanted to find him. However, there was not much movement in the palace, so he didn't pay much attention to it. He thought that it was Her Royal Highness messing around, but after hearing Yiwu's words, it might be true. The two of them had played together since they were young, and the Emperor loved Yiwu, so the two of them had a very good relationship. If Her Royal Highness asked Yiwu to help her find someone, then this matter might be true. At this time, there were bursts of suppressed, painful groans from the Spirit River. The pressure of the Spirit River's water was obviously not small for these people. Qin Feng floated in a corner of the Spirit River, enduring the intense pain in his body. He did not use his spiritual energy to defend himself like the others, because he knew that the stronger the pressure, the better the tempering effect on his body. Suppressing the pain in his body, Qin Feng formed a seal with his hands and entered a state of cultivation, actively absorbing the pool water in the Spirit River. He could clearly feel the pool water brushing against his body. Under the pain, there's also a touch of gentle coldness spreading. Moreover, in this coldness, there was a trace of rich spiritual energy that seeped into his body and healed his injuries. Although the pressure of the Spirit River was unbearable, it was also an excellent place for cultivation while healing injuries. Cultivating here was equivalent to cultivating for a few days in the outside world. A day passed by slowly. The movements in the Tai Ching pool gradually subsided, and a few of them had adapted to the pressure here. Over the course of the day, their injuries had all recovered to varying degrees. So fast, even Qin Feng could not help but be surprised. The recovery effect of the Spirit River was better than that of elixirs and the power of wood. It could be seen that in the four directions of the Spirit River, the speed of the water was obviously faster than in other places. The water vapor here made it look rather blurry. Although they were all in the Spirit River, perhaps because of their opponents, they all tacitly chose to each occupy a corner and stay far away from each other. No one could see each other. Qin Feng was deep in the southeast area, silently absorbing the spiritual qi here to heal his injured body. After a day of recuperation, his injuries had taken a huge turn for the better, but there was still a huge gap between him and his peak condition. Splash! Suddenly, there was the sound of water, and it was constantly approaching. Qin Feng's eyes narrowed, and spiritual energy flowed in his body. However, when he saw the face that emerged from the water, he quickly relaxed and asked indifferently, "Why are you here?" Chapter 473. Changing competition rules. Qin Feng didn't know why this little girl was sneakily approaching him. He was on guard in his heart. The main thing was that she also had a demonic eye on her body. This was the key point. He had to be on guard. He closed his eyes and continued to absorb the spiritual energy and medicinal properties in the Spirit River to heal his injured body. Zhou Mo saw that Qin Feng did not want to say anything. She pouted and said, "Hey, Qin Feng, what are you trying to say? You must be trying to get close to me." Qin Feng opened his eyes and looked at Zhou Mo. He said, "Besides the cooperation at Scarlet Flame Mountain, I don't think we have any relationship. Moreover, we're likely to be opponents in the next ranking competition. Why are you approaching me now?" Zhou Mo was not someone Lucio Saishue could compare to. Qin Feng did not dare to get too close to her. "Of course I want to talk to you about our cooperation." Zhou Mo looked around and whispered, "From what I know, the ranking competition might not be a competition between the four of us." Qin Feng was stunned. He looked at her and said, "What do you mean? Let's not talk about whether the four of us can heal our injuries in the Spirit River. Even if we can, none of us is a match for E-Dance." E-Dance said, "E-Dance has appeared in this year's competition. According to the previous competition rules, the champion will be E-Dance. There is no need to compete. My father revealed that the final competition rules might be changed." Qin Feng heard this and frowned. He thought for a while and said, "Are you thinking of joining forces with me?" "Smart." Zhou Mo nodded and said with a smile, "I don't know if the change in the rules is good or bad for us. One more teammate means one more means. If you and I join forces, even if we have to face Yiwu, we may still have chance. If that's the case, who will be the champion? Can you not be so inflexible? Who said that there can only be one champion?" Zhou Mo looked at Qin Feng angrily and said, "One-on-one. the competition is meaningless. My father speculates that it will be many against one or many against few, and the winner will naturally be the champion. Qin Feng frowned. The Song family had also speculated that this might not be a simple one-on-one competition. However, there was no clear method of competition, so no one dared to speak carelessly. If that was the case, Zhou Mo was indeed the best candidate for an alliance. First of all, Yi Dance was a member of the Yi family, so AI Tianxing could not ally with her. Furthermore, he had a complicated relationship with Luan, so it was even more impossible for him to ally with her. All right, if it's really necessary, you and I will work together to win the championship. Qin Feng nodded. Qin Feng, I'm sincere in joining forces with you. It's also the will of my family. Don't try to fool me, Zhou Mo said. No. Qin Feng shook his head and said, as long as you don't set me up, that's fine. I'll look forward to working together. Zhou Mo nodded and quickly swam away. Qin Feng fell into deep thought. The Zhou family had also speculated in this regard. It seemed that the following competition would not be like the normal system, where there would be many against few. The second day slowly passed by as everyone endured the pain of their cultivation. On the morning of the third day, there was movement in the Spirit River again. The longer they stayed in the Spirit River, the stronger the pressure became. The few of them gradually felt that the pressure was getting stronger and stronger. In the evening, AI, Tianxing, and Luan finally could not bear it and left the Spirit River. As for their injuries, they were almost fully healed. Yes, Yi Dance persisted for 3 days and 3 nights, and you persisted for 3 days and 2 nights. Such talent is indeed not bad. Huang Fuqiren stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. As expected of the Spirit River that contains the 9 heavens spiritual liquid, in just 3 days, you have almost completely recovered. When the two heard this, they were not too happy because there were still 2 people who had not come out. Those 2 are still inside. Could something have happened to them? Clan leader Yi asked suspiciously. If there's an accident, I can sense it from here. Huang Fuqiren shook his head, some light surging in his eyes. I can see that your aura should have recovered by 80 to 90%. There are only 3 days left until the competition day. Hurry up and go back to rest. I hope to see a wonderful performance by then. Luan and AI Tianxing looked at each other, their eyes revealing a strong fighting spirit. They believed that when the time came, their next battle would be a wonderful battle between dragons and tigers. After the 2 were taken away by the clans, only Huang Fuqiren, Song Tsangyun, and the Zhou clan leader Zhou Yuan were left. Clan leader Lin, clan leader Zhou, don't worry. These 2 young people are not ordinary. There shouldn't be any accidents. If there is, I will bring them out as soon as possible. Huang Fuqiren knew what they were thinking and said faintly. When Song Tsangyun and Zhou Yuan heard this, they smiled awkwardly. They were indeed a little worried about the 2. After all, the Spirit River was not an ordinary place. Even the crazy girl from the Yi clan could only persist for 3 days. They really did not dare to believe that Qin Feng and Zhou Mo had the ability to tie with the Yi Dance record. Time continued to pass. Unknowingly, it was already the latter half of the night. In the Spirit River, mist rose, hazy, and the water flowed. After Qin Feng entered the Spirit River, he was also under great pressure. If it were not for his physical body that was far superior to people of the same level, he would not have been able to hold on. But even so, he could not hold on for 3 days. I haven't fully recovered yet. Qin Feng endured the intense pain and crazily absorbed the spiritual energy in the pool water. At the same time, his spiritual energy was also constantly refining medicinal herbs for healing injuries. The power of wood was also constantly circulating. With the 3 of them working together, his injuries were almost completely healed. Even if I can recover to my peak, it will be extremely difficult to compete with Yi Dance. Qin Feng sighed. He could not place all his hopes on Zhou Mo. He knew that Yi Dance was crazy. With his current strength, it would be extremely difficult to win. He was determined to get the longevity flower. Therefore, no matter what, he had to make a breakthrough before the battle. Only then could he have a chance of success. Is there any other way to improve my strength? Qin Feng gritted his teeth and endured the pressure of the pool. Every piece of flesh in his body seemed to be operating, absorbing the spiritual qi in the pool and the medicinal properties of the medicinal herbs. Russell, the faster he absorbed, the faster the pool flowed. At the same time, the pressure of the pool became stronger as the pool flowed. Squeak! Qin Feng felt that his body was about to be deformed. His bones were dislocated, and he felt a bone-piercing pain. Damn it! I can't hold on any longer. Qin Feng's face was red. The spirit river was indeed very beneficial to cultivation, but the pressure was also unbearable. With the toughness of his body, 3 days was his limit. How are the others? He whispered. If he was already in such a state, he did not think that the other 3 would be fine. Buzz. However, just as Qin Feng was planning to endure the pain and give up, his entire body inexplicably relaxed. That pressure also instantly disappeared. He looked at the clear water in shock. He felt that he was separated from the water by something. Chapter 474. 6 days and nights beside him, a huge translucent petal surrounded him. On the petal, there were black runes. The surrounding water was isolated by the petal. However, the spiritual energy in the river continued to flow into his body through the petals. Qin Feng stared blankly at this scene. This was definitely not his doing. Swoosh! He suddenly turned his head, and his pupils shrank. Behind him, surrounded by the petal, there was another person. Zhou Mo. Qin Feng instantly understood that this was Zhou Mo's doing. You've recovered enough. Zhou Mo looked at him and forced a smile. There's no point in doing this, Qin Feng said. He could not hold on for long, even if he forcefully resisted the pressure of the river. If I'm alone, there's no point. Zhou Mo shook his head and said, Do you know that the spirit river contains the 9 heavens spiritual liquid? Qin Feng nodded. He was naturally aware of this. The 9 heavens spiritual liquid could only be refined by the experts of the Forbidden Zone in the 9th heavenly realm. It had an excellent cultivation effect. From ordinary cultivators to those who had surpassed the 9th heavenly realm, it was extremely desirable. It could be said that the 9 heavens spiritual liquid was the most precious treasure in the cultivation world. It was an overlord among cultivation resources. It was also present in the spirit river. However, in order to increase the effectiveness of the spirit river, it was dissolved in the spirit river. That was why it had such an amazing recovery effect. It's good that you know. I don't need to waste my breath, Zhou Mo said. As long as you have a way to condense the spiritual energy in the river, you can condense the 9 heaven spiritual liquid. Hearing this, Qin Feng was shocked. The Song family had never told him about this. It's extremely difficult to refine the 9 heavens spiritual liquid. Even I can't do it. All I can do is block the spirit river's pressure for a period of time. During this period, you need to find a way to refine the 9 heavens spiritual liquid. Hearing this, Qin Feng did not hesitate. Taking advantage of the disappearance of the river's pressure, he activated the 100 Calamity Heaven Devouring incantation. His devouring power erupted as he frantically devoured the spiritual energy in the spirit river. Due to the urgency of the situation, Zhou Mo might not be able to hold on for much longer. Therefore, he did not dare to hold back and circulated the 100 Calamity Heaven-devouring art to its peak. Endless spiritual energy rushed through the petals and formed a spiritual energy vortex around the 2 of them. In the middle of the vortex, endless spiritual energy gathered, and a crystal-clear water droplet slowly condensed. Immediately, a dense spiritual energy filled with vitality spread out. Crash! Streams of water flowed in through the petals, forming a small space that was isolated from the outside world. As the 9 heavens spiritual liquid dripped into it, the clear pool water instantly became crystal clear, and an unusually rich vitality and spiritual energy spread out. Qin Feng took out a jade bottle and quickly stored it inside before continuing to condense it. Zhou was not doing this to help him. Soon, the second drop of 9 Heaven spiritual liquid was condensed. This little girl is almost at her limit. It's time for me to make a move. Suddenly, the old monster's voice sounded in Qin Feng's mind, causing him to be stunned. Kid, this is a cultivation paradise. There's no need to rush out. The demon, I said with a smile. You're willing to make a move? Qin Feng was surprised. If you don't make a breakthrough, I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to win the championship. The demon, I said. Qin Feng nodded and said to Zhou Mo, remove your defense. Seeing the second drop of 9 Heavens spiritual liquid condensed, Zhou Mo did not delay and remove the petal's defense. However, the moment the petals disappeared, a thin layer of light suddenly appeared and enveloped the two of them. The pressure of the spirit river was still isolated. Zhou Mo looked at this scene in surprise, then looked at Qin Feng and said in a strange tone, it seems that you also have a way to deal with it. Qin Feng smiled and did not say anything. Seeing this, Zhou Mo did not ask anymore. Everyone had their own secrets. Staying in a small world isolated by the light screen, the sparkling and translucent river water that contained spiritual energy and life force rustled and washed over Qin Feng's body. After he took the 9 Heavens spiritual liquid, all the pores and even every inch of his flesh and blood seemed to be letting out cheerful cries as they greedily absorbed the river water. His body, which had not fully recovered, almost instantly recovered after absorbing the 9 Heavens spiritual liquid. There was not a single flaw, and his whole person was restored to the peak state. Maybe I can use this to make a breakthrough again. A drop of 9 Heavens spiritual liquid, naturally, could not be used only for healing. Qin Feng's strength had reached the middle stage of small heaven realm. He only needed an opportunity to complete the breakthrough, and the 9 Heavens spiritual liquid was obviously the best opportunity. After his injured body was healed, the remaining spiritual energy that contained vitality constantly rushed into his qi. At this moment, his aura rose again. I should be able to use this to make a breakthrough. Feeling the surge of spiritual energy in his body, Qin Feng chuckled and slowly closed his eyes to absorb the spiritual energy around him. Time continued to pass, and unknowingly, the east was lit up. At this moment, Huang Fuqiren, Song Songyun, and Zhou Yuan, who were outside the Tai Ching pool, opened their eyes. They looked at the Tai Ching pool with a dignified expression. It's been 3 days and 3 nights. It's tied with Yi Wu's record. These two are actually able to persist until now. Huang Fuqiren said in a serious tone. Mr. Huangfu, what should we do? Zhou Yuan asked. Waving his hand, Huang Fuqiren's turbid eyes looked at the bright sky and shook his head. Let's wait a little longer. It should be fine, or else the spiritual river will react. Hearing this, the two could only nod helplessly. Time continued to pass. The 4th day, the 5th day, the two still hadn't appeared. This time, even Huang Fuqiren couldn't hold them back. It was simply a miracle to persist in the spiritual river for 5 days. In his opinion, it was impossible with such strength. However, the spiritual river didn't have the slightest reaction, which proved that nothing unexpected had happened. Day and night alternated. An array of light shone through the horizon. The gentle light dispelled the chill of the night. A new day had arrived. It was already the 7th day. As the sun continued to rise, the expressions of the three became more and more dignified. It had been 6 days and 6 nights, and Qin Feng and Zhou Ho were still in the spiritual river. Mr. Huangfu, can we make a move now? Song Songyun's tone began to reveal some anxiety. Qin Feng was his son-in-law and the benefactor of the Song family. If anything happened to him here, not only would he be unable to face his granddaughter, but he would also feel uneasy. Mr. Huangfu, make your move. Zhou Yuan also said. The one inside was his granddaughter, who had broken Yi Wu's 3-day record. Although it was unexpected, there had been no movement for so many days. He was also worried that an accident had happened. Huang Fuqiren nodded heavily. His expression was solemn as he quickly formed a seal with his hands. A ray of light swept out and hit the boundary of the spiritual river. However, just as the ray of light was about to touch the boundary suddenly shook and ripples appeared in the air. Immediately, two figures appeared in front of the three shocked gazes. At the same time, hearty laughter slowly sounded. Chapter 475. The three Jean E clan. The barrier was broken, and Qin Feng and Zhou Mo's figures flashed out and landed in front of them. "Are you all right?" Huang Fuqi Ren asked as he looked at Qin Feng and Zhou Zhou. "What? Should we be all right?" Qin Feng asked doubtfully. No matter how he looked at their expressions, it seemed like they were disappointed that he was not injured. No cough cough. Huang Fuqi Ren paused for a moment and coughed awkwardly. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly felt the change in Qin Feng and Zhou Mo's aura. He could not help but be shocked. "Both of you broke through. We were just lucky." Qin Feng rubbed his nose. Song Tsangyun and Zhou Yuan's expressions were a little strange. The two of them had actually persevered in the Spirit River for 6 days and 6 nights, and they did not seem to be affected at all. Not only that, they had both broken through. Even Yi Dance was exhausted after persevering for 3 days. Ai, Tianxing, and Lu and were also in a sorry state when they came out. However, these two were not affected at all. Instead, they looked refreshed and full of energy. This was a place of torture, not a place for sleeping. "Zhou family's little girl, do you feel any changes in your body?" Huang Fuqi Ren asked again, unwilling to give up. No matter what, he refused to believe that the Spirit River did not cause Qin Feng and Zhou Mo any trouble at all. Looking at their relaxed expressions, it seemed that if it were not for the arrival of the finals, they would still want to take a bath or swim in it. Since when was the Spirit River so easy to enter? With Yi Wu's talent, she would only be able to persist for 3 days, and that was her limit. However, the two of them had actually doubled it. "No, what's wrong?" Zhou Mo blinked his big eyes. "Nothing." Nothing." Huang Fuqi Ren smiled unnaturally. No matter how unwilling he was to believe it, the truth was the truth. Not only did Qin Feng and Zhou Mo break the Yi Dance record, they also walked out of the Spirit River unscathed. "All right, the finals are about to begin." Huang Fuqi Ren glanced at Qin Feng and Zhou Mo and said, "I see that you two are full of energy. There's no need to go back and prepare. Let's directly enter the arena." Qin Feng and Zhou Mo looked at each other and smiled. Everyone left the Spirit River and rushed towards the Flame City's guild hall. Half an hour later, a group of people appeared at the venue. The Song family hurriedly came forward to welcome them. Qin Feng left for 6 days without any news. They were very worried. "Big brother Qin Feng, are you all right?" Song Shui asked worriedly. "I'm fine." Qin Feng smiled and looked at the battle platform. Ai, Tianxing, and Luan stood side by side and smiled at him. When Qin Feng saw this, he was quite surprised. What was going on? Looking at their positions, it seemed like they wanted to cooperate. It seems that the rules have changed. Qin Feng thought to himself. He suddenly felt a provocative gaze on him for a moment. He looked up abruptly and saw a beautiful figure standing not far away from Ai, Tianxing, and Luan. It was a woman in her 20s. She was dressed in a white dress that outlined her curvaceous figure. Her face was fair and delicate. She had willowy eyebrows and almond-shaped eyes. The first impression she gave was that she was breathtaking. Between her brows, there was a valiant aura, causing her to appear to have a trace of a different kind of allure. Qin Feng was able to sense that the gazes of almost everyone present were attracted by this woman. Yi Dance of the Yi family. Qin Feng recognized this woman at a glance. Although he had never seen Yi Dance before, he could not think of anyone else who could have such a high prestige in Great Yin City other than Yi Dance of the Yi family. The rules of the finals have changed. Instead of the 4 of you fighting to determine the winner and then challenging Yi Dance, the Song family, Zhou family, and Mo family will join forces to challenge the Yi family. Song Su explained the rules of the competition to Qin Feng. Qin Feng nodded secretly. The rules had indeed changed. In other words, Zhou, Mo, Luan, and I will join forces to deal with Yi Dance and Ai, Tianxing. That's right. After the discussion of the judges, they believe that even if the winner is determined, none of you will have the energy and strength to challenge E-Dance. Therefore, the final decision is that the three of you will join forces to challenge the E family. The winner will be the champion. Actually, they have their reasons for making this decision. Otherwise, if there is too much division, there will be nothing to see in the finals. This competition, haha, it's quite humane. Qin Feng laughed softly. They had a high chance of winning 3 against 2. What guild decision? TSK. Song Yuan pursed her lips. She glanced at Qin Feng and said, "There is a rumor that E-Dance came looking for you. She said that you are too weak and she is not interested in a one-on-one fight. Moreover, you're all injured and might not be able to recover. She did not want to bully you, so the rules were changed in the end." Qin Feng was stunned when he heard this. It took him a while to regain his senses. He looked at E-Dance, who was the center of attention, and shook his head with a chuckle. This person is quite domineering. Does she really think that we are all pushovers? However, he really wanted to see just how powerful the #1 expert of the younger generation in Great Yin City, who was rumored to be a god, was. With a light leap, Qin Feng jumped onto the arena. Looks like we're going to be allies this time. Luan squeezed out a smile on his expressionless face. Qin Feng was stunned. Previously, he had clearly felt Lu In's killing intent towards him. However, he could not feel it all now. If Luan was hiding his killing intent for the sake of cooperation, he could not feel it at all. It was either that Luan had removed his killing intent or that it was hidden too deeply. As if he knew Qin Feng's doubts, Luan shook his head and said, "I killed you to return a favor. Regardless of whether I killed you or not, I've already returned the favor." Qin Feng smiled and nodded when he heard this. This person was quite magnanimous. Against that woman, no matter who she is, there is no hope at all in a one-on-one fight. We can only have a chance if we let go of our former enmity and work together. Luan said, "Looks like you're also very concerned about the champion's reward." Qin Feng smiled. Luan shook his head and said, "What I care about is not the reward, but the exotic, desolate spirit chi of the Tianji Pavilion. It is said that the champion will receive a special reward that is related to the Tianji Pavilion." There is such a thing? Qin Feng was surprised. He had not heard of this before. Luan nodded. Obviously, they had come here first and already knew some information that Qin Feng did not. "I also heard from my clan that the champion will receive a special gift in addition to the proper reward." Zhou Mo landed beside Qin Feng with an expectant look on his little face. Luan looked at the two of them and paused for a while before he asked, "You came directly from the Spirit River?" Qin Feng shrugged noncommittally. Luan's face froze when he saw this. Guessing was one thing, but getting a positive answer was another. They really did not expect that Qin Feng and Zhou Mo would actually persist in there for 6 days. Just as the three of them were chatting enthusiastically, an extremely dissatisfied and angry voice was heard. Chapter 476. The finals begin in the fighting ring. AI Tianxing stared at the three of them, then said to E-Dance behind him, "Sister, leave Zhou Mo to me. I haven't won yet." E-Dance fiddled with her long black hair. She didn't even look at the 3 people opposite her. She gently patted with her palm. It seemed slow, but it instantly landed on AI Tianxing's back. In an instant, the spiritual power around AI Tianxing's body was quickly restrained and sealed. "Sister, what are you doing?" AI Tianxing turned his head and looked at his sister in surprise. The surrounding people were also confused. The 3 families were challenging the E family. She and AI Tianxing were teammates. Why would E-Dance attack her opponent? Only a few seniors who were familiar with E-Dance shook their heads helplessly. This little girl was being playful again. "You don't have to be a hindrance here. I can handle it alone." E-Dance said indifferently. From the beginning to the end, she didn't even glance at Qin Feng and the other 2. Her attitude showed that she didn't take her opponents seriously at all. This was absolute confidence. Hearing E-Dance's words, Qin Feng and the other 2 were stunned. This woman actually wanted to take on the 3 of them alone. Was she too ambitious, or did she have absolute strength? AI Tianxing heard this and sighed helplessly. He really couldn't do anything about his sister. These three people are not simple. I'll have to go all out to take on any one of them, AI Tianxing reminded. Dance played with her long hair and glanced at AI Tianxing with her beautiful eyes. She opened her red lips slightly and said, "How difficult would it be for me to deal with three of you?" AI Tianxing froze, then smiled bitterly. He couldn't refute. Three of him was really no match for Dance. Sister, what if I join their side? Iwu's slender fingers paused for a moment, and she frowned slightly. Just when everyone thought that she was measuring the strength of both sides, she nodded seriously and said, "If the four of you work together, it will be a little interesting. Otherwise, I really won't be interested." Her words caused an uproar in the audience. Everyone was stunned. Dance actually wanted to take on the four of them alone. Actions are better than thoughts. Go. Dance sent him to the other side in Yili's studio. Yili Yang Feng Xian Li Zai Tianxing. Sister, are you really going to do this? Tianxing looked at Wu in disbelief. Do you think I'm joking? Wu shrugged and raised her snow-white chin at a 45-degree angle, pretending to be profound. The championship is not attractive to me at all, because it is not difficult at all. What I care about is whether or not it can give me a sweaty battle. How can you make me Tianxing Yili? Studio Yili. Sister Wu, I want to give birth to your children. Countless people shouted. Their faces were red with excitement. Even many women were looking at her with stars in their eyes, while others were risking their lives to fight for the championship. This big sister didn't care at all. What she cared about was whether there were worthy opponents for her to fight. In terms of level, they were not on the same level. This was what it meant to be a master. This was what it meant to be invincible. Hearing the cheers, Qin Feng and the others were stunned. They had all heard that Dance was strong and arrogant. She didn't take anyone of the same generation seriously. Today, they had seen it for themselves. Not only did she propose to fight one against many, but she also threw her teammates over. She was just afraid that the opponents weren't enough to excite her. It seems that we are teammates too. AI Tianxing looked at the three of them and smiled bitterly. If you join us, who will be the champion? Including the Yi family? Qin Feng frowned and asked. If that was the case, then what was the point of this competition? Seeing his serious appearance, AI Tianxing raised his eyebrows. Do you really think you can win with me joining? You underestimate my sister too much. She dared to do this because she has absolute confidence in defeating us. No way. Are these explosives really that powerful? Zhou Mo smacked his lips and asked, has she really entered the 9th stage heaven realm? Probably. AI Tianxing nodded with a wry smile. Hearing this, Qin Feng and the others were shocked. Although they had guessed it was possible, hearing it from AI Tianxing's mouth still made them feel great pressure. Although there was only a half-step difference between the 9th stage heavenly realm and the half-step 9th stage heavenly realm, the gap was like a heavenly chasm. Simply put, a true 9th stage heavenly realm master could easily suppress dozens of half-step 9th stage heavenly realm masters with a flip of their hand. The two sides were simply not on the same level. The former had already entered the heaven realm and could mobilize world energy for her own use. No matter what, we have to fight. Lewin said, yes, she used to bully me a lot, and this time she even kicked me out. No matter what, I have to teach her a lesson. AI Tianxing nodded, his teeth-grinding appearance causing Qin Feng and the others to be stunned. AI Tianxing's hatred for this sister is not small. However, whether she has really broken through or not is not certain, but there is a very high possibility. You guys are chatting so happily. Little girl with the Yuan spirit body of the Zhou family. Stay to the side. Elder sister will play with you later. Iwu put her hands on her hips and raised her eyebrows, pointing at Qin Feng and the others and scolding. If you want to chat, I'll throw you all on the bed later. You three can talk about life and ideals on the bed. As soon as Iwu's voice fell, there was a burst of laughter in the square. Three grown men chatting about life and ideals on the bed. Why was this scene a little dirty? When the laughter entered their ears, Qin Feng and Lu In's faces were a little unnatural. They looked at AI Tianxing but the latter just smiled helplessly and said, "This woman is a powder keg. She has a bad temper. You can't light it up, or she will explode. Cousin, no matter what, I'm still your cousin. Can't you leave us some face?" "Sure." Iwu looked at the three of them and laughed. Her big eyes flashed with a playful light, causing Qin Feng and the others to feel unnatural. "I'll take good care of you later. Brother Yi, can you not talk so much?" Luan looked at AI Tianxing and said helplessly, "I said something wrong." AI Tianxing hurriedly raised his hands. His posture did not have the demeanor of a leader of the younger generation. "Damn, you're addicted to chatting. Do you want me to move a bed over so you can lie on it and have a good chat?" As soon as Iwu said that, the whole crowd burst into laughter again. Even the older generation in the stands could not help but shake their heads and smile bitterly. How did this solemn atmosphere become so funny? The tense atmosphere of the finals was nowhere to be seen. This woman looked quite elegant before, but I didn't expect her to be so violent. She doesn't have the modesty of a girl at all. She speaks all kinds of dirty words. She's really an explosive. Qin Feng muttered softly. Although his voice was soft, AI Tianxing's face changed. He quickly covered Qin Feng's mouth and said in his ear, "My cousin hates it when people say that she's not like a woman. She will explode." She heard it. Luan's voice came from the side, and he swallowed his saliva. Qin Feng could clearly feel AI Tianxing's body suddenly stiffen. He was puzzled. What was going on? Weren't these two very confident before? Why did they feel so afraid of Iwu now? While Qin Feng was puzzled, Iwu's beautiful face suddenly showed a bright smile, dazzling the surrounding people. "Later, I'll take good care of each of you. Don't worry, I won't be biased." Iwu smiled brightly. Her beautiful smile made many people lose their minds. As she said that, she waved her sleeves mercilessly. 3 spiritual power ribbons shot out and shocked the 3 of them. Chapter 477. The girls were all gone. Qin Feng's eyes suddenly shrank as he stared at Yi Dance, his heart trembling. Yi Dance's aura seemed to have really broken through to the 9th stage. Originally, although some people had guessed that Yi Dance was likely to break through to the 9th stage, how could this realm be so easy to break through? Qin Feng had also had his doubts before. After all, Yi Dance's age was obvious, and breaking through to the 9th stage was easier said than done. But now that the facts were in front of him, the shock in his heart could be imagined. A 23 or 24-year-old girl breaking through to the 9th stage of heaven, this kind of talent could even be considered abnormal. With such an opponent, even if any of them had heaven-defying means, they would not be able to defy heaven and earth in a one-on-one fight. Even if it was now 4 against 1, no one was optimistic about their chances. However, no matter how sharp a tiger's teeth are, there will always be a few hard bones that will break and shatter. Qin Feng's eyes quickly became sharp. Although Yi Dance's strength was tyrannical, he had encountered many opponents who were stronger than her. If Yi Dance wanted to oppress him, she would have to pay a price, even if she was a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master. Qin Feng's sudden burst of fierce momentum was noticed by the 3 people in the field almost at the same time. AI Tianxing and Luan both looked at him in surprise. "Good, elder sister will be interested in fighting like this." Looking at Qin Feng, Yi Dance nodded slightly. "Since you're going to be oppressed by her anyway, do you want to obediently be beaten by her and become a joke to others? Or do you want to resist? Even if you can't beat her, we'll still be defeated with honor." Qin Feng shouted and rushed towards Yi Dance, actually taking the initiative to attack. "Good, you're a real man." Outside the field, there were cheers of admiration. AI Tianxing and Luan glanced at each other. Soon after, 2 powerful auras that belonged to experts of their level suddenly erupted. They were indeed unable to take the initiative to be beaten. Qin Feng had just entered within 3 meters of Yi Dance when she casually waved her hand and sent him flying backwards. Yi Dance quickly closed in and slapped Qin Feng's chest with her lily-white hand. When Qin Feng saw this, he was shocked. This Yi Dance was so fast. Chi! Suddenly, a black line of energy shot towards Yi Dance's arm. The sharp cutting intent made her pull back her hand, that was about to hit Qin Feng's chest. Boom! A purple light came from the other side. Dance slapped back and scattered the purple light. After letting go twice in a row, Qin Feng took the opportunity to quickly retreat and leave Dance's attack range. The three gathered together, their faces abnormally solemn. This Dance was too terrifying. Even with the three of them working together, they still couldn't gain the slightest advantage. We can't fight separately. We have to work together to have a glimmer of hope. Qin Feng's face was solemn as he said in a deep voice, I'm fast, so I'll be the main attacker and distract her. Brother your attack power is stronger, so you'll feign an attack outside and wait for an opportunity. Qin Feng glanced at Luan and said, You'll lie in ambush outside and lock your aura on her at all times. Don't let her focus on me. At the crucial moment, you have to help me resolve the danger. When Tianxing and Luan heard this, they were both stunned. This guy was so kind as to give the most dangerous task to himself. I know what you're thinking. Qin Feng glanced at the two and said softly, We can only fight if we use our strengths. Otherwise, we'll be completely defeated. The two were slightly startled and immediately took a deep breath. They looked at Qin Feng with a different gaze. Why don't you let Zhou and Mo join in? Tianxing asked. Let's test our bottom line first so we can better use our tactics, Qin Feng said. The three quickly spread out and surrounded Dance in a triangular formation. Ganging up on me? Interesting. I like to see what tricks you can play in the face of absolute strength. Seeing this, Dance chuckled softly. The powerful aura in her body slowly spread out. On the battle stage, Dance no longer held back her aura. When her aura spread out, the faces of Qin Feng and the other two in the field suddenly became extremely solemn. They were finally going to have a real fight with a 9th-level Heaven Realm Master. With a flip of his palm, the sky-splitting axe was put away. Without the suppression of the sky-splitting axe, Qin Feng's whole body exuded an indescribable sense of ease. The flow of spiritual energy in his body seemed to have sped up. With a heavy stomp of his foot, Qin Feng took the lead and rushed toward Dance as fast as lightning. He clenched his fists so tightly that creaking sound could be heard. Seeing this, Dance shook her head. With a wave of her white hand, a stream of spiritual energy mixed with fierce power shot toward Qin Feng. Xiao! However, just as the spiritual energy stream was about to hit Qin Feng, his figure suddenly disappeared. Dance frowned slightly. Immediately, she felt a strong wind coming from the left. She blocked with her lily-white hand. Qin Feng's whip kick landed heavily on Dance's lily-white hand. Pum! With the sound of the explosion, Dance's delicate body trembled slightly. As for Qin Feng, he was directly sent flying by the force. Your speed is not bad, but your strength is a little weak. Dance smiled slightly. With a slight movement, she strangely appeared in front of Qin Feng. At this moment, Qin Feng had not recovered from the shock. However, just as Dance was about to approach him, a purple light quickly attacked from the side. Punk! With a wave of her lily-white hand, the purple light was dispersed. Dance slapped toward Qin Feng. However, with her slight pause just now, Qin Feng quickly retreated. You think you can run? Her red lips curled up slightly. Dance suddenly accelerated. Almost in a flash, she appeared in front of Qin Feng. At the same time, her lily-white hand slapped toward him again. Xiao! However, this time, she missed again. Qin Feng directly summoned his light wings. With a change of steps, he dodged Dance's attack. Then, he quickly flew into the sky. You want to fight with me in the air? A playful smile appeared on Dance's pretty face. Competing with her in flying, wasn't he courting death? Just as Qin Feng flew into the air, he saw a blur in front of his eyes. Dance had already appeared above him. A foot was stomping toward him. Miss, you're exposed. Qin Feng suddenly said. Ah! Dance shouted and quickly retracted her foot. She glared at Qin Feng in exasperation. Only now did she realize that she was wearing leggings. How could she be exposed? Little pervert! Watch how this sister will beat you. With a scolding, She attacked again. With a buffer, Qin Feng quickly escaped. The two figures flashed quickly in the air. However, in terms of flying ability, Qin Feng was obviously not comparable to Yi Dance. In the air, Qin Feng had no choice but to exchange a blow with Yi Dance. He quickly retreated, but Yi Dance quickly caught up. Xiao! At the critical moment, another fierce attack came from below. So annoying. Yi Dance frowned and kicked the purple light. When the purple light exploded, she didn't notice a black line that was hard to see with a naked eye flash past. Yi Dance increased the speed of her attack and forced Qin Feng to retreat. Miss, you're exposed. Yi Dance wouldn't be fooled again. She whipped her leg toward Qin Feng. Qin Feng kept retreating. As he retreated, he shouted, Miss, you're really exposed this time. Don't you feel a little cold on the inside of your thigh? Chapter 478. Fighting Yi Dance together, there was an obvious cut on her skirt, and her leggings were also cut open. What's going on? Yi Dance's face flushed red. Then, she remembered the purple light that exploded from her kick. Something seemed to have brushed past her leg. Two stinking brats. Yi Dance gnashed her teeth as she glared at AI, Tianxing, and Luan below. Then, she quickly descended. Qin Feng also quickly descended. His shout was not soft, so everyone present could hear it. After being stunned for a moment, an earth-shattering burst of laughter rang out. Some of the older generation experts in the stands were also embarrassed. They shook their heads. What's wrong with this group of brats? Their moves were, at first, Qin Feng was also puzzled. Why were these two fellows so dirty? However, when he saw their strange gazes, he understood. When he said that she was exposed, they thought it was some kind of reminder. Therefore, the two of them discussed for a moment and decided to attack Yi Wu's lower body. Women were different from men. If men really fought, they wouldn't care even if they were naked. However, it was different for women, especially for a girl like Yi Dance. They didn't want to see her naked. If they could tear a few holes in her clothes, they would definitely be able to restrict Yi Dance's leg techniques. In fact, it was just as they had expected. It had to be said that although these three people's moves were dirty, they had a very good effect. On the stage, Yi Dance's cheeks were red with anger. She shouted at the elder at the referee's table, No, I want to change my clothes. How can two sides stop fighting so casually? I don't agree, Qin Feng said seriously. After he finished speaking, he glanced at AI, Tianxing, and Lu, and I don't agree either. If the referee agrees, then every time we encounter a crisis, we will call for a pause, Luan said. He quickly added, Brother, he also agrees. AI Tianxing. Yi Dance gritted her teeth and looked at AI Tianxing. Brat, you're out of luck. AI Tianxing didn't want to admit it first, but after being insulted by Yi Dance, his stubbornness came out. He said loudly, You used to bully me a lot, and this time you even ignored me. This is a lesson for you, cousin. Don't be so arrogant. Brothers below the stage, do you agree? AI Tianxing shouted to the audience. No, we don't agree. We don't agree before the victor is decided. Below the stage, countless youths cheered with flushed faces. Their expressions were as righteous as they could be. However, this kind of justice didn't last for long. One person couldn't help but laugh loudly, which immediately caused a chain reaction. Everyone knew what was going on and laughed loudly. The entire square did not have the slightest tense atmosphere of a great battle. Yi Dance's cheeks were red. Her eyes were almost spitting fire as she stared at the three people who were trying not to laugh. After a while, she looked at the referee's seat. The several elders at the referee's seat also smiled awkwardly. Although they knew why those people didn't agree, it was the finals now. If they stopped the game because of this, it was indeed unreasonable. As they said, if they stopped the game because of this, they could also call for a pause when they encountered a crisis and lost. In this dilemma, the few people at the referee's seat talked to each other and pretended not to see. Yi Dance saw this and was so angry that her teeth itched. However, at this point, it was useless to do anything. AI Tianxing really cheated his sister. Everyone laughed again. You little brats, I will remember this. I won't let you lose so quickly. A few words jumped out between her teeth. Edance took out a cloak from her chinkoin bag and tied it around her waist. Although it couldn't completely cover her, as long as she didn't walk too far, it could still cover her. Since you guys are so dirty, don't blame me for being even dirtier. On the fighting ring, as Edance's face darkened, the laughter gradually died down. In the square, Qin Feng and the other two people's faces also became serious. Edance was obviously going to be serious. Same old way, attack her lower body. The three of them tacitly spread out. Qin Feng flew into the air again and circled around Edance. However, this time Edance didn't even look at him. She turned to attack AI, Tianxing, and Luan. In a flash, Edance appeared in front of Luan. Her jade-like hands turned into claws and directly tore several holes in Luan's chest, who couldn't react in time. It was unknown whether she was not ruthless or Luan's reaction was fast, but Edance's attack only tore the clothes in front of his chest. Slap! As Luan retreated, Edance swung her jade-like hands, leaving a clear palm print on his face. The crisp sound resounded throughout the square. After slapping Luan, Edance turned around and rushed toward AI Tianxing again. At this moment, AI Tianxing also reacted quickly. The spiritual power in his body surged, and he threw a punch. Edance's jade-like hands grabbed AI Tianxing's fist. Her spiritual power was like a stirrer, tearing the clothes on AI Tianxing's entire arm into pieces. Slap! With the same slap, AI Tianxing flew out with his bare arm. In the blink of an eye, their clothes were torn and their faces were covered with palm prints. They rolled away in a sorry state. The scene suddenly quieted down. As expected of Edance, whether it was Luan or AI Tianxing, they were both top masters. However, they could not even withstand one move from her, and ended up in such a sorry state. Edance raised her head and looked at Qin Feng in the air. She smiled and said, "Little brat, just you wait. When I beat them all down, it will be you. I want to know if you will call for a timeout when the three of you are all naked." Hearing her words, Qin Feng's face twitched. Naked? This Edance's taste was too strong. Similarly, AI Tianxing and Lu An's old faces turned red when they heard her words. If that was really the case, then they would lose all their face. Whoosh! Edance swung her lily-white hand. With a flash of light, a fiery red long whip appeared in her hand. The long whip swung with a fierce fluctuation of spiritual power. Like a soft snake, it lashed towards AI, Tianxing, and Luan. Under Yiwu's attacks, the two of them were forced to retreat again and again, suffering unspeakably. Every time the whip lashed out, it would tear open a wound on their bodies. This woman did not cause any harm to their bodies. She only focused on tearing their clothes. Not long after, the clothes on the two of them were torn beyond recognition. Except for the key parts that were covered by a loincloth, the rest of their bodies were completely naked. They were almost naked. Qin Feng looked at this scene. When he thought about how he would be like this later, the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. This woman's methods were too dirty. If these two people completely fall, then it will be my turn next. It seems that I can only fight head-on. Qin Feng's flickering eyes suddenly focused. He swooped down, and the spiritual power in his body burst out. Everyone, let's attack together. This tomboy wants to humiliate us. We can only fight head-on. With a loud shout, Qin Feng appeared above Edance. A white flaming fist shot towards Edance. Edance swung her arm, and the long whip danced, scattering the flaming fist. Seeing this, Qin Feng quickly retreated. Want to leave? Chapter 479. The True Showdown Bang. Falling heavily to the ground. Before Qin Feng could get up, Edance's foot lightly stepped on his chest. Spiritual energy surged, and Qin Feng was instantly subdued. Feeling the mountain-like foot on his chest, Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. He grabbed Edance's foot with both hands. The ancient, desolate spiritual flame burst out, the white flame burning fiercely. The scorching heat from her legs surprised Edance. She lowered her head and looked at the surging white flame. Her heart skipped a beat. What a powerful flame. It can even burn my spiritual energy. Humph. Dance snorted coldly. Strong spiritual energy surged out from her leg and suppressed the ancient, desolate spiritual flame. Once you're under my foot, don't even think about leaving. Is that so? Qin Feng sneered. The corner of his mouth curled into a strange smile. Dance saw it and frowned slightly. Before she could think, a bone-piercing chill came from under her feet. That kind of chill seemed to be able to freeze one's blood. The change from extreme heat to extreme cold made Dance relax. At the same time, a black light suddenly appeared and bombarded Dance's back. At the critical moment, Zhou Mo made his move. The fierce attack made Dance's body unsteady. At that moment, Qin Feng jumped up and grabbed Dance's ankle with both hands. He threw her out fiercely. Her body floated in the air like a flower petal drifting in the wind, drawing a perfect arc in the air. Then she smashed down. Bang! The long whip shot out and heavily nailed itself to the ground. Borrowing this force, Wu's falling figure paused, after which she twisted her body and her hands touched the ground. She somersaulted in the air and landed steadily. But just as she landed, a black shadow flashed over, followed by a fierce aura. Dance instinctively put her arms together in front of her chest. Boom! Qin Feng's feet landed heavily on Dance's arms. A ferocious force poured down from his leg. Dance's delicate body immediately shot out like a cannonball under countless shocked gazes. He flew straight out of the arena. 3 heavenly hands. Black light surged around Zhou Mo's body. 3 tentacle-like black hands shot out and slapped Dance's body as fast as lightning. Dance lost just like that? F*CK, this is too much. Looking at the figure that flew out of the fighting ring, countless people opened their mouths in shock. Wu, who had the absolute advantage, was suddenly defeated? Before the real battle had even begun, he had already lost. This made many people who wanted to watch the final battle shake their heads in regret. Qin Feng also looked at this scene in astonishment. Obviously, he had not expected that he and Zhou Mo would be able to create such a great power together. But just when everyone thought that the battle was about to end, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred a few meters away from the fighting ring. Dance, who had lost her balance and was about to land on the ground, suddenly shook her body. A pair of golden wings stretched out from her back. The wings slowly flapped, and her falling body paused for a moment. Then, she quickly rose into the air and floated in the air. Spiritual energy wings. Qin Feng stared blankly at Dance, who was floating in the air. A heavy feeling spread in his heart. Spiritual energy wings was a technique that only supermasters at the 9th heavenly realm could use. This was also one of the reasons why only at this realm could one truly fly. In the previous battle, although Dance's spiritual energy was strong and seemed to have broken through to the 9th heavenly realm, there was still a slight gap. Especially when it came to the use of world energy, there was almost no gap. So he always thought that Dance was still a bit away from the real 9th heavenly realm. But now, it seemed that she had been holding back. She had really broken through to the 9th heavenly realm. AI Tianxing, Lu In, Zhou Mo, and countless people outside the fighting ring stared blankly at this scene, unable to recover for a long time. Flapping her wings, Dance slowly landed on the fighting ring. She stared mockingly at Qin Feng and the others, who had bitter expressions on their faces. With a wave of her jade-like arm, a stream of spiritual energy with tyrannical fluctuations swept towards Qin Feng. Yin-Yang Seal, the black and white spiritual energy, formed a Tai Chi diagram and rushed towards the stream of spiritual energy. Yin-Yang Tai Chi Wheel. The spiritual energy around her surged and turned into a black and white wheel, slowly rotating. Pung. The yin-yang seal and the stream of spiritual energy were in a stalemate for a moment before exploding. The remaining power of the stream of spiritual energy swept over again and bombarded the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel. Boom. Asterisk the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel and the stream of spiritual energy exploded at the same time, and Qin Feng was forced back. Looking at Qin Feng, who was not defeated by her attack, Yi Dance was slightly surprised. She had already used her true strength. Even a casual blow could suppress a half-step ninth heavenly realm master, but this guy was only forced back. To be able to reach this step, you really do have some skill. Yi Dance chuckled and was about to continue attacking Qin Feng when her eyes suddenly narrowed and she turned to look at the other three. On the other side of the fighting ring, AI, Tianxing, and Luan stood apart. Around AI, Tianxing's body, endless purple light surged and shone brightly. In the blooming light, a giant purple fist that seemed to be cast from purple gold emerged. As soon as the giant purple fist appeared, the surrounding air quickly fluctuated and a tyrannical fluctuation slowly spread out. On the other side, Luan's face was expressionless. He separated his palms, and between them, black energy threads twisted and wriggled. A terrible cutting intent spread out. Counting carefully, there were as many as 7 of them. Each of them exuded a sharp aura. When the 7 of them gathered, the space in front of him seemed to be cut open. On the other side, the black mark between Zhou Mo's eyebrows bloomed. A black light lingered and a fierce wind caused the void to ripple violently. In the turbulent void, a 3-inch-long black spear slowly condensed. Suddenly, an indescribable sharp aura filled the air, as if it had the power to pierce through everything. Above Qin Feng's palms, one black and one white, spirit energy lingered. Scorching heat and icy cold occupied half the sky. The two forces collided, and suddenly a large amount of white qi was produced. The white qi rose, making him look somewhat illusory. The two palms slowly came together, and the black and white spirit energy suddenly became violent. A sizzling sound was constantly heard. Under Qin Feng's suppression, the violent spirit energy slowly merged. Black and white merged. Yin and Yang embraced each other as if they were one. They formed the shape of Yin and Yang, showing the power of Yin and Yang. Yi Dance had already shown her true strength. Qin Feng and the others all knew that any unorthodox methods would be useless. Only by using their true strength might they have a chance. In all 4 directions, tyrannical spirit energy fluctuations erupted. At this moment, Yi Dance's expression finally became serious. Her gaze swept between the 4 people, and then she slowly took a breath. The spirit energy in her body suddenly erupted, and the pressure of the 9th heaven realm immediately enveloped the entire fighting ring. Chapter 480. All lost under this pressure, for auras soared into the sky from the battle stage and counteracted most of the pressure. The square was completely silent. The square was completely silent. Even the leaders of the various factions and the spectator stand stopped talking to each other and stared at the few people on the battle stage solemnly. The atmosphere became increasingly tense. Each of the 4 auras carried a ferocious energy. That energy continued to condense and become increasingly tyrannical. AI Tianxing's body moved without any wind as he slowly rose into the sky. In front of him, a giant purple fist was formed. Between Luan's palms, there were 12 black energy lines. Wind blew under his feet as he slowly rose into the sky. Above Zhou Mo, dark clouds seemed to cover the sky. The sharp black spear continuously absorbed the energy from the dark clouds, causing its color to become deeper and thicker. The yin-yang Tai Chi wheel slowly rotated as a large black and white hand appeared on it. In the palm, the yin-yang seal constantly flashed as black and white light spread out. Opposite the 4 auras, an even stronger aura spread out. Boundless spiritual energy wrapped around Yi Wu, causing her figure to appear and disappear. Faintly, a terrifying energy slowly formed, causing those who were close to it to feel uneasy as they continuously retreated. 5 powerful auras continued to gather as 1 tiger and 4 wolves locked onto each other. Rumble. The auras became stronger and stronger as the energy in the heavens and earth started to show signs of going berserk. In the square, gusts of wind blew as countless people continuously retreated. It was only after they had retreated for nearly 100 meters that the uneasy pressure gradually weakened. The victor is about to be decided. Song Su looked at the increasingly intense energy fluctuations in the sky with a solemn expression and murmured in a low voice, "Big Brother Chin Feng. He won't be injured, right?" Song Shui asked worriedly. Although she couldn't sense the terrifying energy in the sky that was as deep as the sea, she knew how terrifying it was to be in it. Once the energy there clashed, it would form a huge storm. "Don't you see that those experts have already spread out?" Song Su said in a deep voice. "The confrontation this time is very likely to be the final battle for the Flame City Guild. They don't know what kind of impact this confrontation will have, so they have made preparations beforehand. This is the first time in history that a guild war in Flame City has reached such a stage. There is a vacuum around the four of them, and in this area, there were several figures standing in the air, releasing tyrannical power. Under the attentive gazes of countless people, the energy in the sky finally condensed to the extreme. For beams of light soared into the sky. Purple blazing fist, sky-splitting black scorch wave, black demon spear. Three yin-yang arts as one. Feeling the oppressive spiritual energy, Yi Dance took a deep breath. The spiritual energy around her body rippled like boiling water, constantly tumbling violently. Soon after, a large hand wrapped in flames stretched out. Heavenly Hand. 5 terrifying attacks streaked across the sky under countless nervous gazes. In the end, they collided with each other like meteors. At this moment, the heavens and earth fell silent. Immediately after, a terrifying sound wave, as if the thunder god had descended, resounded throughout the entire square. 5 attacks, each carrying an incomparably ferocious energy, heavily collided with each other. Suddenly, an earth-shattering explosion of energy resounded throughout the square. Rumble. In the sky, a terrifying energy burst out and spread out like a mushroom cloud in full bloom, containing terrifying energy fluctuations. Kacha! Kacha! Before the energy shockwave hit the ground, the fierce energy rushed over, and the entire battle stage was instantly filled with cracks. In the sky, the energy shockwave continued to spread. Fortunately, the older generation experts took action and created a 4-sided shield to defend the surroundings, preventing the energy shockwave from spreading. Buzz! The energy shockwave hit the 4-sided shield, causing it to tremble. Some of the weaker experts' faces turned pale, and the grave expression on their faces became more intense. Although Yi Wu was the only one among them who had reached the 9th heaven stage, when the attacks of the 5 gathered together, collided, and devoured each other, the resulting energy became increasingly violent. This kind of power was something that even the masters of the older generation did not dare to casually provoke. "Increase the defense," Huang Fuqi shouted. In the sky, an even stronger spiritual energy poured down, supporting the 4-sided shield and controlling the energy shockwave within a certain range. In the 4-sided shield, the yin-yang hand seal wheel, the purple giant fist, a dozen black energy lines, a black spear, and an incomparably huge palm released their own energy, madly colliding with each other. The air escaped, and the space seemed to become extremely distorted. Everyone's vision began to blur. One could clearly see that in the distorted space, the yin-yang hand seal wheel, the purple giant fist, a dozen black energy lines, and the black spear. These 3 attacks were tyrannical, but the giant hand's power was even greater, and it had an absolute advantage. Rumble. The entire battle stage below was completely destroyed in an instant, and it was a complete mess. After a period of devouring and resisting, the energy of the yin-yang palm wheel, the giant purple fist, the dozen or so black energy lines, and the black spear gradually weakened. After another dozen or so breaths of time, the 4 attacks exploded, filling the sky with spiritual light. The 4 attacks were scattered. Similarly, the energy consumption of the gigantic hand was not small, and it became much fainter. However, it still didn't dissipate. It carried the remaining might as it slammed towards Qin Feng and the others. Seeing this, their faces changed wildly, and they quickly retreated. However, after releasing their strongest attack, their speed was much slower, and the giant hand swept over them. Pucci! 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 4 arrows of blood spurted out from the mouths of the 4 people. Qin Feng's body swayed, and then fell down, while AI, Tianxing, and Lu En's bodies shot down like cannonballs. 2 large pits were left on the ground. Zhou Mo's feet touched the ground, and he slid all the way to the edge of the battle stage before barely stopping. The energy shockwave in the air gradually dissipated, revealing the scene inside. The 3 of them were all lying in a pile of rocks, their bodies covered in blood, and their auras were chaotic. In the rubble, Qin Feng was the first to get up. After a few breaths, AI, Tianxing, and Lu En sat up with difficulty. In the sky, Yi Dance's pretty face was somewhat pale, and the wings on her back were so faint that they almost disappeared. She slowly landed in front of them. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they were so shocked that their mouths were wide open. These 4 fellows were indeed the strongest of the younger generation in Yin City. They were actually able to fight with the 9th stage Heaven Realm Yi Dance to this extent. Everyone could feel that Yi Dance's consumption was definitely not small, but her spirit energy was much stronger than the 4 of them, and that was why she was able to hold on in the exchange. When the older generation powerhouses in the air saw this scene, they retracted their spirit energy and looked at the tragic scene, and they all smiled bitterly. These little fellows are no longer able to fight. Yi Dance should be the winner, Huang Fuqi said. Everyone nodded. Obviously, they could see that although Qin Feng and the others were very powerful, they were still no match for Yi Dance. They were all outstanding people of Great Yin City, and they did not want to see anyone lose. Chapter 481. Fight again. The square fell into silence as Qin Feng's voice rang out. Everyone stared at him, and many people secretly gave him a thumbs up. No matter what, Qin Feng still had the courage to fight again, which had already won over many people. He slowly stood up, and under his clothes and on the surface of his body, the light of chaos slowly faded. At the last moment, he activated the primitive war body, which helped him block most of the impact. Therefore, he did not suffer too much damage. We still have the strength to fight. AI, Tianxing, and Lu En looked at each other, gritted their teeth, and stood up shakily. Even if they knew that they would lose, they did not want to fall behind Qin Feng. Looking at the 3 people who stood up with difficulty, Huang Fuqi did not know what to do for a moment. He looked at Yi Dance. As if she did not receive Huang Fuqi's gaze, Yi Dance shouted softly, "Since we still have the strength to fight, let's continue." As her voice fell, her figure shot out and appeared in front of AI Tianxing. The latter did not have time to resist and was sent flying by her palm. He spat out another mouthful of blood miserably. He directly fainted. After knocking out AI Tianxing with one palm, Yi Dance did not slow down. She turned and rushed toward Lu En. The latter only put up a little defense, and then followed in AI Tianxing's footsteps and fainted. "Next, it's your turn." Yi Dance turned and shot toward Qin Feng. With the delay of AI, Tianxing, and Lu En, he had time to buffer. The spiritual power in his body was frantically circulating, and the power in his flesh was also mobilized. At the same time, the mental power in his mind was also surging. However, just as Yi Dance was about to appear in front of Qin Feng, a black spear suddenly attacked. Yi Dance raised her eyebrows and suddenly twisted her body. She grabbed the 3-inch-long black spear, clenched her 5 fingers, and slowly crushed it. Qin Feng took this opportunity to quickly retreat and landed beside Zhou Mo. After using this move, Zhou Mo's delicate body trembled, and her delicate cheeks were full of sweat. Obviously, although she was much less injured than AI, Tianxing, and Lu En, she was still injured. Qin Feng glanced at Zhou Mo, who seemed to be burning with black flames, and whispered, "How are you?" "I'm fine." Zhou Mo gently shook her head, a resolute light flickering in her large eyes. This little girl is going to use more of the demon eyes power. If that's the case, she might have to lie in bed for a long time. The demon eyes voice sounded in his mind. Qin Feng was taken aback. He turned his head to look at Zhou Mo. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said in a soft voice, "Stop. Although that power can allow you to obtain great power for a short period of time, the backlash is not something you can easily endure." Zhou Mo was stunned. She looked at Qin Feng in astonishment. He actually knew about her situation? This shocked Zhou Mo greatly. In Great Yin City, everyone thought that it was because of her special physique. However, Qin Feng actually saw through her at a glance. "How did you know?" Zhou Mo editor. Transin. Qin Feng smiled and shook his head. He walked forward and whispered, "You haven't fully grasped that power. There's no need to risk your life." Looking at Qin Feng's back, Zhou Mo was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you still want to continue? If I'm lucky enough to create an opportunity, I'll leave it to you to end it." Qin Feng walked step by step toward Yiwu. The spiritual power around him grew stronger. A rather fierce aura spread out. Yiwu raised her eyebrows and said, "You're a stubborn little guy. That's good. I haven't had enough fun." Immediately, an even stronger aura erupted. Among the rocks, a strong wind blew. Spiritual power whistled, and some small stones were directly sent flying. Qin Feng's expression was extremely serious. His spiritual power quickly spread out and enveloped his body. Then, his body disappeared under the shocked gazes of the crowd. He finally used this move. Song Su and the others focused their eyes and whispered. Qin Feng had used this move on Scarlet Flame Mountain. It was very strange. Yiwu was also stunned. However, she quickly sneered and suddenly slapped to the right. The powerful palm wind swept across, and the void distorted for a moment. "Xiao!" Yiwu quickly shot out. Waves of spiritual power constantly shot out from her body. Everyone could only see Yiwu constantly waving her hand among the rocks, but they couldn't find any trace of Qin Feng. However, they could see that every time Yiwu attacked, the void would ripple and there would be a muffled explosion. Pung! The void shook and a figure fell out. "Very good spiritual power, but it's far from enough to compare to me," Yiwu said. Qin Feng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and helplessly withdrew his spiritual power. After fighting for so long, he hadn't used his spiritual power. It wasn't that he wanted to preserve it, but that his spiritual power couldn't keep up with the increase in spiritual power. His spiritual power was only at the lower earth grade, which was only comparable to the spirit detecting realm. It wouldn't be of any help in a battle at this level. Even if he could hide his body, it would be useless. His opponent was a genuine 9th level heaven realm powerhouse. "I heard that you scared Yihua to the point of admitting defeat. He's still half my disciple. I want to see how good you are at fighting with fire." Yiwu waved her jade-like hand, and a deep purple flame appeared. The moment the flame appeared, it caused the temperature of the entire area to rise abruptly. The extremely high temperature caused her figure to become distorted and illusory. When Qin Feng saw this, his expression became serious. Yiwu's flame was probably much stronger than Yihua's dazzling azure raging fire. With a shake of his finger, the ancient desolate spirit flame appeared and curled around his fingertips like a small snake. Looking at the white flame that was wandering around Qin Feng's finger, Yiwu's expression changed slightly. Ever since she started playing with fire, this was the first time she felt her flame tremble. "What kind of flame is this?" she thought to herself. Then with a wave of her hand, the flame suddenly burst out and turned into a raging purple flame that swept toward Qin Feng. "Go!" Qin Feng flicked his finger, and the ancient desolate spirit flame burst out, turning into a sea of white flames that collided heavily with the purple flame. At the moment of contact, anyone could see that the space at the center of the contact was collapsing layer by layer under the intense heat. As soon as they came into contact, a sizzling sound was heard as the air continued to explode. What surprised Qin Feng was that the ancient, desolate spirit flame, which had always been invincible against any flame, had lost its power this time and was blocked by the purple flame. In fact, compared to her, Iwu was more surprised. After all, it was being controlled by a 9th-level Heaven Realm powerhouse. There was a huge gap in strength between them. Moreover, her own flame was extremely powerful, but now it was unable to destroy the white flame. As the stalemate passed, the momentum of the white flame gradually weakened. Qin Feng was shocked when he saw this. Although the ancient, desolate spirit flame was extremely powerful, the difference in strength between him and Yi Wu was too great. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to withstand such consumption. Chapter 482. Dao Yin Mode reactivated on the broken battle platform. The purple and white flames each occupied half of the sky, fighting against each other. Everyone's line of sight was distorted. The terrifying heat forced those who were close to it to use their spirit energy to defend themselves. In this stalemate, the power of the white flame gradually weakened. When everyone saw this scene, they knew that Yi Wu was about to win. I didn't expect Yi Wu to be so good at fighting fire. I'm afraid that the Song family's son-in-law won't be able to hold on this time. Everyone sighed. They still remembered that Qin Feng had scared Yi Hua into admitting defeat in a fire battle. Now, he was about to be defeated by the same move. As the saying goes, every dog has its day. Sooner or later, he would have to pay for what he had done. He had defeated the Yi family with this move, and now the Yi family was using the same move to defeat him. Xiong xiong. Finally, the power of the white flame was exhausted, and the purple flame surged like an angry python. It swallowed Qin Feng. Qin Feng. Big brother Qin Feng. Seeing this scene, the faces of Song Su and the others changed abruptly. Their eyes were filled with deep worry. The Song family's son-in-law is really going to lose this time. When the powerhouses saw this scene, they all understood that the battle was about to end. No matter how good Qin Feng was at playing with fire, he would be swallowed by Yi Wu's flames. After all, this time, a 9th-stage Heaven Realm powerhouse was controlling the flames. The corners of Yi Wu's mouth curled up slightly as she watched this scene proudly. However, in the next second, the smile on her face froze, and her picturesque eyebrows slowly furrowed. Under countless gazes, the purple flame burned fiercely like the sea, shaking with terrible energy fluctuations. Everyone thought that the Song family's son-in-law was really going to lose. As the flame gradually subsided, the scene inside slowly appeared under everyone's gaze. Qin Feng lost. Hey, what's going on? Why is that purple flame burning in Qin Feng's hand? It's not Yi Dance's flame. When they saw the situation inside, everyone was dumbfounded. Qin Feng, who should have been on the verge of death, was completely unscathed. The flames that no one under the 9th stage of Heaven Realm could withstand had not harmed him in the slightest. One could still vaguely see that there were wisps of flames flowing around his body like electric arcs, but there was not even the slightest burn mark left behind. What was going on? Everyone was dumbfounded. They did not understand what was going on. Yi Dance stared at Qin Feng with her beautiful eyes. For the first time, a look of surprise appeared on her face because only she, as the owner of the flame, could feel that she had lost control of the flame. You stole my control over the flames. How did you do it? Yi Dance asked. Although her voice was not loud, it was not hidden in the slightest. Everyone heard it clearly, so they were even more confused. How did Qin Feng control Yi Dance's flame? This was unrealistic. Everyone knew, especially those who played with fire, that the flame they refined was their lifeblood. It was connected to their flesh and blood, so it was impossible for others to control it. However, from Yi Dance's words, it seemed that Qin Feng had forcibly controlled Yi Dance's flame. Qin Feng smiled and did not answer. In front of the fire god Law, it was useless no matter how good your fire skills were. The fire god, Law, controlled all the flames in the world. When used to the peak, it could even control the spirit fire, not to mention Yi Dance's flame. intercepting the control of my flame from the source. This kind of fire control method is quite interesting. Dance's eyes showed some interest. Qin Feng's technique was something she had never encountered before. But this alone is far from enough. Dance chuckled and quickly formed a seal with her hands. At the same time, the flame that fell on Qin Feng's palm shook violently. This scene shocked him. The fire god Law was actually unable to completely control Dance's flame. This flame has a master, and it is driven by a 9th stage Heaven Realm master. Even if you have the fire god Law, it will not be easy for you to control it. The demon eye informed. Qin Feng secretly nodded and formed a seal with one hand. In the world, the power of fire constantly seeped out. Xiong xiong, endless power of fire emerged, and in the blink of an eye, it became a prairie fire. The whole sky was surrounded by flames, and the fire burned the sky. Countless people looked at the fire that filled the sky and were suddenly stunned. What was going on? The sky was filled with flames. Who could control it? This was much more terrifying than the hundreds of scattered flames that were used to deal with Dance. The sky and the ground were filled with flames. It was as if the place had turned into a sea of fire. Iwo also opened his mouth in a daze and felt that his mouth was dry. First, he forcibly intercepted Dance's flame, and now he mobilized such a large scale of flames. It was obvious that Qin Feng had held back in the battle against him. This is too abnormal. Just in terms of playing with fire, even Sister Dance is not as good as him. Iwa shook his head and exclaimed. Dance was also stunned. She really could not imagine how Qin Feng could control such a large scale of flames. Her delicate body shook slightly, and a vigorous spirit energy spread out, forming an energy shield to resist the invasion of the flames. Just in terms of playing with fire, I really am not your opponent. Dance's eyes locked on a Qin Feng and immediately whispered. But since this is a competition, it is not a one-sided ability, so she looked at the flames around her and took a deep breath. Fierce spiritual energy burst out from her body, directly shaking the flames around her and dispersing them. If you play with fire, no one is your opponent. It's just a pity. Dance's jade-like hands continued to attack, and wherever her palm wind passed, the flames were all defeated. Soon, the flames in the sky disappeared by more than half. Qin Feng looked at this scene and shook his head helplessly. There was still a big gap between him and Dance. You can't control my flames. Dance waved at Qin Feng from a distance. The purple flames swayed, then broke away from Qin Feng's control and rushed back into Dance's body. Without the control of the flames, what else do you have? Dance slowly walked over, and powerful spirit energy vibrated. Bang, bang. She gently waved her arm, and the void trembled, and the invisible blades were shaken away. Your spirit level is too low, and your spirit attack is ineffective against me. Looking at the slowly approaching Dance with an indifferent expression, Qin Feng took a deep breath. Looks like I have to fight with my life on the line. Qin Feng murmured with a smile, and then slowly closed his eyes. The spirit energy around him quickly converged, and in his energy sea, the Tao seed spun, and the Tao Qi filled the air. What? Have you given up? Dance looked at Qin Feng with a bright smile, and her big eyes were filled with mockery. I haven't played enough yet. How can it end like this? Boom. As she spoke, Dance stretched out a hand, and suddenly, a giant hand of spirit energy grabbed at Qin Feng. Bang! However, just as the giant hand came within 3 feet of Qin Feng, a ripple spread out from his body, and in an instant, the giant hand of spirit energy was shaken away. At the same time, Qin Feng slowly opened his eyes. In his clear black and white eyes, there was a white glow like a burning flame. Yes, how can it end like this? Chapter 483. Tao Technique. Condensing the 3 elements, the entire square was silent. Everyone stared blankly at Qin Feng. Even though they did not know what had happened to Qin Feng, they could feel a strong sense of uneasiness emanating from him. It was a kind of throbbing that came from the depths of his soul. The giant hand formed by Dance's spiritual energy was so easily dispersed by him. This shocked everyone. What had happened to Qin Feng that made him so strong? At this moment, even Dance's pretty face froze. Spiritual light condensed in her beautiful eyes as she stared at Qin Feng. She could feel that Qin Feng had undergone some kind of change. It was as if he had become illusory. Is it that move? Lewin, who had just woken up, stared at Qin Feng and murmured in a low voice. When he used the forbidden technique, Qin Feng had used this move to break it. At that time, it was too sudden, so he did not carefully understand what move Qin Feng had used. However, he could feel that the feeling that Qin Feng gave him now was exactly the same as when he was in the endless prison of blood. Slowly exhaling, Qin Feng looked at Dance. This time, the scene in his eyes had completely changed. At this moment, the entire square was within his perception. He could even feel the emotions of excitement, bewilderment, and excitement. Dalian mode. He clenched his fist. The completely different feeling of power made him smile. This was the first time that he had fully displayed the state of this mode after condensing the Tao seed. Just how powerful are you? Qin Feng murmured. Immediately, his figure disappeared. The next moment, he appeared directly in front of Dance. His powerful fist fiercely smashed down. After his fist landed, his figure disappeared again. He appeared behind Dance, and then disappeared again. On the broken fighting platform, the space around Dance was constantly rippling. People could only see in shock that vague shadows were flickering around Dance. Their traces were ethereal, and even the naked eye could not see them clearly. Roar! The roars of dragons and tigers continued to reverberate, accompanied by Qin Feng's repeated attacks. Energy surged, and the void around Dance continued to explode, accompanied by sonic booms. Bang! After another collision, Qin Feng's figure paused for a moment before disappearing into thin air. The next time he appeared, he was already at another location, attacking from a tricky angle. Dance kept blocking Qin Feng's attacks. Her heart was slightly shaken. Qin Feng's current speed was too terrifying. Sometimes, even if she could sense the trajectory of his attacks, her defense would be inferior. Boom! Two streams of spiritual energy whizzed out. One was a dragon's roar, while the other was a tiger's roar. The dragon and tiger roared as they intertwined with each other, spiraling towards each other. The dragon came from the clouds, and the tiger came from the wind. With Qin Feng's current strength, it was far from what it used to be. One could see that wherever the dragon and tiger roared, the space became distorted. Dance was expressionless. She struck out with her palm, and the wind from her palm attacked, shattering the spiritual energy of the dragon and tiger. Yin-yang hand, yin-yang seal. A large black and white hand stretched out. In the palm, the yin-yang seal vibrated, and black and white light bloomed. 5 fingers clenched, and a jade-like luster flickered. Accompanied by a jade fist, a spiritual energy fist blasted out, smashing directly into the center of the yin-yang hand. With a rumble, the yin-yang hand and the yin-yang seal exploded. The spiritual energy fist whizzed and blasted towards Qin Feng. Yin-yang Tai Chi wheel. A black and white light wheel appeared and slowly rotated, obliterating the spiritual energy fist. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 rays of light shot out from 3 directions. Bang, bang, bang. Dance's jade-like hands waved quickly, and 3 rays of spiritual energy swept out, shattering the rays of light. Yin-yang arrow. Whoosh. Suddenly, the black and white light burst out. With a whoosh, a shallow mark was left in the void. Feeling the swift and fierce wind, Dance quickly turned around. Spiritual energy wrapped around her jade-like hands, and she grabbed the yin-yang arrow. Her spiritual energy vibrated wildly. However, just as she was about to crush the yin-yang arrow, her gaze suddenly froze. She turned her head and looked at the longan-sized pearl that had unknowingly appeared beside her. Various images of beasts seemed to be carved on the surface of the pearl. appearing extremely ferocious. In the next second, the beast suddenly swelled and exploded with a bang. The roars of the beasts were endless. When the shock wave gradually weakened, Qin Feng charged in like a ghost. Soon after, a huge water ball appeared out of nowhere, after which an extremely deep and muffled sound was emitted. Boom! Suddenly, a ferocious spiritual energy spread out, and a huge water ball shattered with a bang. Yiwu's figure burst out, and there were water snakes coiling around her body, with their tails connected to the bottom. Qin Feng pushed his hands forward, and the power of water gushed out from his palms, turning into water snakes. Like vines, they coiled tightly around Edance. Edance is actually defeated. Everyone's jaws dropped. The powerful Edance was actually at a disadvantage, and she was forced to retreat. Edance's pretty face froze. She did not expect Qin Feng's series of attacks to be so powerful, especially the combination of the various attacks. Even she could not defend against it for a while. Bang! Her delicate body shook slightly, and spiritual energy surged, shattering the water snakes coiling around her body. They turned into dense water droplets that dripped down. Qin Feng waved his arm, and the countless water droplets suddenly gathered, turning into two huge sailors. Finally, they attacked Edance in the middle. Seeing this, Edance snorted coldly. Two rays of spiritual energy spread out from the left and right, quickly shooting out and shattering the sailors. However, just as they were shattered, the sailors condensed again. What's going on? Everyone stared blankly at this scene. Wasn't Qin Feng good at playing with fire? How could he control so much water now? This water did not evolve from spiritual energy, so where did it come from? This water and fire seems to be the energy of heaven and earth. One exquisite method to be able to extract the energy of heaven and earth like this. Some of the older generation were surprised. Their eyesight was naturally not as good as that of the younger generation. At a glance, they could see that the water and fire were the energy of heaven and earth, and were not real water and fire. Although these moves of yours are wonderful, it is still not enough to deal with me. Edance looked indifferently at the power of water suspended in the sky. Qin Feng was silent for a moment, and then he withdrew the power of water. Edance was right. Under the Dao Yin mode, he could indeed use all kinds of methods with the least consumption and release them with extreme precision. He could also use all kinds of attacks in the most tacit way to display their greatest power. However, there was a limit to his strength. No matter how great the power was, there was a limit, and this limit did not have any real lethality to Edance, who was at the ninth heaven realm. If this is all you can do, then it's time to end it. Edance said softly. Spiritual energy fluctuated and attacked Qin Feng. Feeling the horror of this attack, Qin Feng took a deep breath. In the palm of his hand, mental energy and spiritual energy condensed. A small mark slowly took shape, and an unusually tyrannical power slowly filled the air. It's time to try this move. Wong wong wong. The sky trembled, and a cluster of flames entered the mark. Then a blue light flashed, and a stream of water flashed. Then a green stream of air seeped out and entered the mark. The power of water, fire, and wood. The power of the three elements surged in the mark. Chapter 484. Present yin and yang energy around Qin Feng's body. Water, fire, and wood. These three types of energy surged out. And in the center of his palm, a mark flickered. Inside it, blue water, red flames, and green air currents were slowly squirming. Buzz! An invisible wave of air spread out with him as the center. Wherever it passed, some of the small stones on the ground directly exploded. Edance quickly rushed in front of Qin Feng and sent a palm strike over. However, when she sent out her palm, her face suddenly froze. The panic and helplessness that should have appeared now did not appear on Qin Feng's face. Instead, the corners of his mouth curled up into a strange arc. Edance faintly gasped. What's going on? Does this guy have a backup plan, or is he just trying to be mysterious? Given his current physical condition, it was very difficult for her to imagine what kind of backup plan Feng could have that could block her current attack. Insignificant skill. With a soft chuckle, Dance paused for a moment. Then, without the slightest hesitation, she sent a palm strike towards Feng's chest. In her opinion, Feng was just trying to be mysterious. He was playing a psychological battle. Looking at Dance, Feng smiled softly. A hoarse and deep voice slowly came out from his mouth. Tao law condensation of the three elements mutual generation hand. He slowly pushed out his palm. At the center of his palm, a symbol rippled beautifully. Buzz, buzz. The Taoist imprint suddenly expanded in the wind. Within it, three types of light flickered intensely. Subsequently, a large hand with three colors flowing with red, blue, and green stretched out from it. In an instant, the three types of light flourished like a resplendent sun. At the instant of contact, Dance's pretty face suddenly changed. As the force spread out, her body was also sent flying under numerous shocked gazes. What's going on? How can he still send out such a powerful attack? What level of battle technique is that? Everyone was shocked. With Feng's current situation, it was hard to imagine that he could defeat Dance by himself. Dance's figure quickly retreated in the air like a bird before landing nimbly on the ground. Her pretty face froze slightly, and her eyes were filled with astonishment. This kind of attack was not completely spiritual power, nor was it pure spiritual power. It was a very strange kind of power. Looking at Yiwu, who was only pushed back, Feng's eyes flashed with regret. He could only barely use his Tao techniques. Taoism was the carrier of the five elements technique. It was not something that could be cultivated by cultivating both spiritual power and spiritual power. It was the five elements technique that could truly unleash the power of Taoism. It was a pity that he only had the art of three elements, and he was unable to fully comprehend the wonders of combining the Tao technique with the five elements. So he could only barely unleash a portion of its power. This was also why the three elements divine art in his body reacted when he encountered Tao art. The Tao technique combines the five elements. It can only unleash its true power when it promotes and restrains each other. You only have the power of water, fire, and wood now. Naturally, you are unable to truly unleash the power of Taoism. Emoyan's voice sounded in his mind. Water breeds wood, wood breeds fire. You are now using the three elements hand of mutual engendering of the Tao technique. With only the power of three elements, you should not be a match for this little girl. Kid, it won't be that easy to win the championship. Feng nodded secretly. Based on the situation just now, even this move would not be able to defeat Dance. If he wanted to win, he had to use other methods. However, Dance clearly did not give Feng too much time to think. Her figure flashed, and a palm lightly slapped over. It seemed slow, but in fact it sealed off all of Feng's escape routes. He could not avoid this palm. An indescribable oppressive palm wind enveloped Feng. Clearly, Dance did not hold back in this attack. Taking a deep breath, the power of the three elements converged into his body. Feng fiercely bit the tip of his tongue, and the taste of blood spread in his mouth, causing him to become much more clear-headed. The ancient desolate spirit flame, an underworld pill in his body, constantly released flames and coldness, forcibly extracting spirit energy from his flesh and blood, and then pouring it into his palm. Perhaps it was the desire to win, or perhaps it was because the two types of energy were too exhausted, but there was not much resistance, and they fused together. This time, the fusion was not something that could be done by relying on his precise control of the two types of energy. But now, he was exhausted and did not have the extra strength and energy to control the ancient desolate spiritual flame and underworld elixir. However, it was in this state that the two completely opposite types of energy began to merge. Lifting his drooping eyelids slightly, Qin Feng also felt the energy fluctuations in his palm, and his heart could not help but tremble a little. The fusion of yin and yang, forming the shape of yin and yang, manifesting the power of yin and yang. The true control of yin and yang, I seen have done it. Qin Feng whispered softly, but he did not have time to carefully feel this strange feeling. He danced his palm, which carried an unparalleled palm wind, slapped towards him. Pa! Qin Feng did not have time to think about anything else, and his hands quickly slapped out. Another collision occurred, and in an instant, terrifying ripples spread out from the collision between the two of them. However, the scene of Qin Feng vomiting blood and flying backwards did not appear. His two palms were in a deadlock in the air, and fire and chills revolved in his palms, releasing opposing forces. At this moment, Edance's beautiful face changed greatly. This time, she was even more embarrassed as she retreated backwards. Half of her palm was red and emitting hot air, while the other half was white and emitting chills. Her cheeks suddenly flushed red, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Edance is injured. How is this possible? The surrounding people were so shocked that their mouths were wide open, and they were overwhelmed with shock. Even the experts of the older generation felt that it was a little inconceivable. They could feel that Qin Feng did not have much spiritual energy left in his body, so how could he still have the power to injure Edance? However, just when everyone thought that Edance was injured by the shock, what happened next shocked them even more. Edance, who was in the field, trembled slightly and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Her aura suddenly became chaotic. Thump, thump. Stumbling back a few steps, Edance spat out another mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground under the shocked gazes of the crowd. The group of people stared at Qin Feng as if they had seen a ghost, and the shock in their hearts was indescribable. What on earth did this guy do? Edance had not shown the slightest bit of weakness. Why would she be defeated by Qin Feng, who did not have much resistance, when she was sure to win? Now, it was even more abnormal. She was seriously injured. This was too unbelievable. Qin Feng was also stunned by Edance's fall. He looked at his palms blankly, and the black and white spiritual energies slowly dissipated. He could feel that this power, although containing extreme heat and extreme cold, was not strong enough to seriously injure Edance in this state. Yin and yang intertwined, and reversed yin and yang. Did you destroy the balance of yin and yang in her body? Chapter 485. Eye-opening under the Dao Yin mode, you should have completely understood what yin and yang body is. Previously, you could only take the form of yin and yang, but now you have reached the level of yin and yang power. Your yin and yang did not disturb the balance in her body, but directly broke it, causing her to lose control of her body temporarily. Therefore, even if your attack was not strong, she lost control of her yin and yang, which is equivalent to having no defensive power, the demon eye said. Hearing this, Qin Feng finally understood. No wonder he felt like he was controlling yin and yang when their palms met. It turned out that he had only understood the first half of the yin and yang body, taking the form of yin and yang, but not the power of yin and yang. Of course, Yiwu was careless and did not pay attention for a moment. So Qin Feng's yin and yang power broke the balance in her body, causing her to lose control of her body and unable to form a real defense. This balance originated from within her body. Once it was lost, it was equivalent to losing control of her body for a short period of time. It was like a person who lost his center of gravity and would inevitably fall to the ground. The yin and yang power in the yin and yang body inadvertently disrupted the balance in Yiwu's body, causing her to lose control of her body and be invaded by the power, causing her to be seriously injured. Pucci. However, Qin Feng was not in a good state either. Even though he had defeated Yiwu, the latter's attack was not light. There was still a strong force invading his body, causing his blood and qi to churn. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Qin Feng staggered back, and the white light in his eyes slowly disappeared. He had been knocked out of the Dao Yin mode, and without this mode, he also lost all perception of this area. There was no way he could compete with Yi Wu. Aware of his own situation, Qin Feng could not help but smile bitterly. He had fought to this point, and Yi Wu had also suffered some injuries. How could he not continue to fight? Slowly exhaling, Qin Feng forced himself to be alert, and the spiritual power slowly flowed in his meridians. Yi Wu wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and stood up. The yin and yang in her body that had been disrupted also balanced, and she regained control of her body. After a slight feeling, she looked at Qin Feng, and the interest in her eyes grew stronger. She had suffered a lot in the hands of this guy, but because of this, she was even more interested in Qin Feng. Looks like you still don't want to give up. Yi Dance's lips curled up, expressing the joy in her heart. Among her peers, there was no one who was a match for her, and no one dared to challenge her position, which caused her to feel bored. Now that she had met someone who could continuously display a mysterious ability that even surprised her, the Do Chi that she had suppressed in her heart was also stimulated. Now that I'm more interested in you, I don't want to defeat you immediately. Yi Dance lightly moved towards Qin Feng. The wind from her palm attacked, but this time it was not very strong. Let me see what other abilities you have. This was her truth. Among those of the same generation, no one was able to arouse her interest. Even if it was 4 against 1 earlier, it couldn't be considered much to her. However, Qin Feng's appearance caused her to be interested. She didn't want to end this fun immediately. Sensing Yi Dance's mentality, Qin Feng smiled bitterly with a trace of helplessness. This was the first time he had suffered such a big loss among his peers, and he was no match for her at all. He quickly retreated, avoiding the attack, and his eyes kept flashing. With my current strength, whether it is the 10,000 beast summoning technique or the divine dragon technique, it will be difficult to cause her much damage. The 5 elements technique won't work either, and I haven't really condensed my Dao technique yet. She's on guard, and I'm afraid the yin-yang technique won't work either. The spirit seal is limited by the shortcoming of mental strength, and its greatest lethality is only at the small heaven realm. The great desolate war body in Dao Yin mode can't be activated in a short time. Qin Feng's mind constantly flashed with one idea after another, but in the end, all of them were eliminated. These moves of his would definitely have great lethality against someone of his level, but in front of 9th stage Heaven Realm Master, they were still not enough. It was not that he was not strong enough, but the gap between 2 great realms was simply too great. Since ancient times, how many people had dared to challenge a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master in the small Heaven Realm? Qin Feng's flickering eyes suddenly focused as he muttered to himself, I can only use this move. It's just that I can't fully control this move, so I'm afraid I won't be able to lock on to her. But it seems that besides this move, there's nothing else I can do. A ruthless glint flashed in Qin Feng's eyes as he sent a voice transmission to Zhou Mo. This will be my final attack. After this attack, I will no longer be able to fight. Whether you can grasp this opportunity will be the key to us becoming the champion. Hearing Qin Feng's sudden message, Zhou Mo was startled. Looking at his back, he immediately nodded gently. Taking a deep breath, Yang Kai's physique vibrated and his blood qi boiled as a special circulation method began operating within his body. Between his eyebrows, a faint red stream of qi surged, but under the cover of the surging spirit qi around his body, it was not noticed by others. Hong hong hong. Yi Wu continued to attack. Under her endless offensive, Qin Feng's figure was like a small boat in a raging sea, swaying left and right. From time to time, he would be hit by Yi Wu, causing him to stagger back. Seeing this scene, everyone shook their heads. This son-in-law of the Song family was indeed very powerful, perhaps even stronger than Ai, Tianxing, Luan, and the others, but it was still impossible for him to deal with Yi Wu alone. Don't you have any other abilities? Looking at Qin Feng, who was stumbling back and constantly coughing up blood, Yi Wu shook her head in disappointment. Then, a fierce light began to condense in her eyes, and her attacks instantly became terrifying. If this is all you have, then this battle should be over. Iwu quickly attacked, her strong spirit qi surging towards Qin Feng like raging waves. Feeling the terror of Iwu's attack, Qin Feng took a small step back, and a curtain of fire blocked in front of him. Using the power of fire, Iwu shook her head. Her attack was fierce and fast, instantly destroying the curtain of fire. It's over. She quickly flew towards Qin Feng. However, just as she was about to get close to him, the latter suddenly raised his head. In between his brows, there was a vertical eye that was half open and half closed, with traces of blood qi lingering around it. However, at this moment, Iwu's pupils shrank, and her hair stood on end. An indescribable sense of danger surged in her heart. Out of instinct, she suddenly stopped. At this moment, she was only a step away from Qin Feng. As long as she stretched out her hand, she would be able to hit Qin Feng. But to everyone's surprise, she was like a wild cat with its hair standing on end. She was greatly frightened and quickly retreated. What's going on? Everyone was stunned. Iwu could have ended the battle as long as she stretched out her hand, but why did she stop? Moreover, she retreated in a panic. Boom! Just as everyone was in a daze, a terrifying and tyrannical aura suddenly erupted. Qin Feng raised his head, and between his eyebrows, the immortal reincarnation eye slowly opened. Extremely intense red light gushed out like a volcanic eruption. Chapter 486. The champion. Everyone looked at Qin Feng in horror. They could not believe that a man at the late stage of the small heaven realm could launch such a terrifying attack. The red light shone brightly. Heaven and earth seemed to be silent for a while. The sky dimmed, as if it had been drained of all its energy. Rumble. In the next moment, an indescribable red light burst out, as if it was going to shatter the sky and reverse the universe. An extremely violent aura suddenly burst out. Before the scarlet light had even shot out, ripples had already spread out crazily. Pieces of rocks of various sizes on the ground were all shattered. The red light cut through the sky, and the terrible shock wave left a deep mark on the ground. The whole broken fighting ring was split into two at this moment. At this moment, Iwu was shocked. She felt a terrible force, as heavy as a mountain. At some point, she felt so powerless that she was about to admit defeat. However, she was a 9th-level Heaven Realm expert, so she quickly came to her senses. The spiritual energy in her body surged out crazily. At the same time, the red light burst out. Buzz! The red light rushed into the spiritual energy without any hindrance. In an instant, Iwu's spiritual energy was shattered. It could not withstand the impact of the immortal light. It's not enough. Blue veins squirmed on Qin Feng's forehead. His immortal reincarnation eyes blinked. Then, another red light slowly condensed. Iwu's face was extremely solemn. She was shocked. How powerful was this light? Her defense was as fragile as paper in front of it. Boom! In the end, she tried her best to change the trajectory of the immortal light. It brushed past her, leaving a shallow blood mark on her arm. Block it! On the high platform, the expressions of the older generation experts changed. Iwu did not block the immortal light. Instead, she dodged it. Naturally, the light would continue to attack, and its target was the most crowded part of the stands. If the immortal light were to land there, who knew how many casualties it would cause? Huang Fuqiren was the first to make a move. In an instant, he appeared above the immortal light and clenched his fist. The space around the immortal light flickered with silver light, as if it was being torn apart. The immortal light was destroyed piece by piece. Good boy, even someone who has just entered the 9th stage Heaven Realm would find it hard to block such an attack. Huang Fuqiren's heart trembled slightly. He was also astonished. How could someone from the lesser Heaven Realm unleash such a terrifying attack? Below, countless people breathed a sigh of relief with pale faces. They looked at the dissipating scarlet light with lingering fear. If Huang Fuqiren had not blocked the light, who knew how many people would have died in this area? Lowering her head to look at the wound on her arm, Edance secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she had dodged it. If this blow had hit her body, she would have been seriously injured in an instant. This guy is really not simple. Whoosh! At this moment, Edance's expression changed again. Another immortal light burst out at her. It was so fast that she did not even have a chance to dodge. Instinctively, she moved her body half an inch to the side, but that was all she could do. The distance was too close, and she was almost sealed by the immortal light. Now, she could only watch as the scarlet light was about to penetrate her left shoulder. Poochie! The immortal light flashed by and pierced Edance's left shoulder. It shot out from the back of her shoulder, bringing with it a string of blood. It was like a blooming firework, full of palpitating fear. Countless people widened their eyes in shock and looked at this scene in disbelief. Edance had been seriously injured by Qin Feng again in a head-on confrontation. Poochie! Edance coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. Even though she had avoided the fatal blow, the power of this blow was too terrifying. The tyrannical aura of the immortal light invaded her body. In an instant, she was seriously injured. At the same time, 3 short black spears appeared beside Edance without anyone noticing. Each spear was pulsating like a black flame, and they shot towards Edance's head, heart, and throat. Edance's pupils contracted. Her body was disturbed by the tyrannical aura that invaded her body, and she had no way to defend herself. Buzz! However, just as the black demon spears were about to pierce her body, a strong wind suddenly swept over and shattered all 3 black demon spears. Looking at this scene, Qin Feng heaved a sigh of relief. He could no longer support himself and sat down on the ground. With his hands behind his back, he supported himself with a gratified smile on his face. The one who had blocked the black demon spears was not Edance, but clan leader He. Since he had intervened, it meant that Edance had lost. After executing a crucial killing blow, Zhou Mo could no longer hold on, and his body went limp. Obviously, under the powerful attack of the immortal light, it required a lot of control to hide her 3 black demon spears near Edance. Therefore, it consumed a lot of her energy. If it was a battle of life and death, if clan leader He had not intervened, Zhou Mo's move would have taken Edance's life. Of course, she did not really want to kill Edance. Once something uncontrollable happened, there would definitely be a supreme expert interfering. Once someone interfered, it would mean that the person being interfered had failed. Therefore, she had to kill Edance and force someone to save her. Otherwise, once Edance dodged, they would be the ones to lose. Qin Feng and Zhou Mo looked at each other and smiled comfortably. Although the 2 of them did not say anything, this level of tacit understanding was not something that anyone could achieve. We finally won. Qin Feng exhaled. He knew that his greatest killing move was the immortal Tensei Eye. However, until now, he had not been able to fully activate the immortal Tensei Eye, let alone control the immortal light. It was not a problem to deal with a half-step 9th Heaven Realm Master, but his opponent was a 9th Heaven Realm Master. With his control of the immortal Tensei Eye, he could not accurately lock onto a master of this level. This move consumed a lot of his energy, so once he used it, he had to achieve the desired result. Otherwise, it would only increase his energy consumption. This was also the reason why he had not used this move before. This time, if he had not been forced by Edance, Qin Feng would not have used it so easily. It seems that I have to get some powerful moves from old Mo, he thought to himself. Except for the heaven-devouring finger that was taught to him at the beginning, the demon I had not taught him any more powerful moves until now. Now, with the improvement of his strength, the heaven-devouring finger was no longer of much use. It would be unreasonable if old Mo did not teach him other big moves. Since clan leader He has made a move, then Miss Edance is considered to have lost. Qin Feng stood up and said, "Huh." Clan leader He laughed and admired Qin Feng very much. He said, "You and the girl from the Zhou family discussed this, right? You forced me to make a move." Qin Feng smiled noncommittally. If he had not done this, it would have been almost impossible for them to win this battle. They could not afford to fight a protracted battle. Mr. Huangfu, in this battle, the Yi family has indeed lost. Clan leader Yi said to Huangfu Qiren. He was very magnanimous, without the slightest resentment. Yi Dance's gaze was complicated and strange, with a trace of anger as she stared at Qin Feng. She slowly walked in front of Qin Feng. Seeing Yi Dance's actions, clan leader Yi was shocked and hurriedly said, "Girl, the battle for the championship is over. If I hadn't made a move, you would have died on the spot. So you have lost. Don't make a move. He joined forces with those two bastards to bully me. I must take revenge for this." Yi Dan stared at Qin Feng and said fiercely, "Little Wu, don't be rash." Huangfu Qiren was even more shocked when he saw this. The outcome of the battle had already been decided, but Yi Dan still wanted to avenge a personal grudge by making a move on the champion. If anything happened, even the Yi family would not be able to bear the responsibility. If this was really the case, even the emperor would be angry. After all, the rules of the Yin City Guild were that maliciously hurting someone, especially after the end of the battle, was not allowed. However, Yi Dance did not pay attention to the two of them at all. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, she grabbed Qin Feng's clothes with both hands and tore them apart. Chapter 487. What was fake was real. When he saw Yi Dance walking toward him, Qin Feng immediately sensed that something was wrong with her actions. However, he had exhausted too much of his energy. Before he could react, a knife hand landed heavily on the back of his neck. Qin Feng's vision turned black, and he felt dizzy. All he saw was a pair of evil hands reaching toward him. Then, there was nothing else. When Qin Feng woke up, a day had already passed. During this short period of time, the entire Great Yin City was in an uproar. Everyone was discussing the finals. This was especially true in the final stage. Qin Feng had severely injured Yi Dance, and Zhou Mo had launched a powerful surprise attack. The older generation elites had no choice but to intervene, resulting in Yi Dance's defeat. Everyone was talking about this. His reputation had surpassed AI, Tianxing, Luin, and the others in one fell swoop. He had become the most powerful person among the younger generation in Great Yin City. Of course, Yi Dance was not included in this list. However, when everyone was discussing this, there were also some scandals that were exposed. That was when Qin Feng was unconscious, he was stripped clean by Yi Wu. Yi Dance's actions had shocked everyone. When the older generation elites saw that Yi Dance had not really hurt Qin Feng, they did not stop her and allowed her to abuse Qin Feng's body. In the end, Qin Feng was stripped naked by Yi Dance. Only the last piece of cloth was left to cover the most important part of a man. This caused quite a stir at that time. Many people who saw Yi Dance's actions beat their chests and stomped their feet regretfully. They wanted to shout, "Let go of that man and come at me if you have anything to say." While the outside world was discussing this, the main character, Qin Feng, finally woke up after Yi Tian had fainted. "Come, drink this medicine." Song Shui helped Qin Feng up and let him lean on her shoulder. Then, she fed him the medicine mouthful by mouthful. In fact, Qin Feng himself was against this. Although he was weak, it was not to the point where he could not eat. However, Song Shui did not pay any attention to him. "The championship should be ours, right?" Qin Feng asked. Song Shui blushed and nodded. "Yes." Oh, hearing this, Qin Feng finally breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, he remembered that Yi Dance had knocked him out in the end. He quickly asked, "What about Yi Dance? You weren't dissatisfied in the end, right?" Song Shui's cheeks turned even redder, but fortunately, Qin Feng couldn't see it. "She's also injured, but it's not serious. You don't have to ask so many questions, just focus on recuperating." After feeding him the medicine, Song Shui helped Qin Feng lie down. Then, without giving him a chance to ask any questions, she quickly ran out. Looking at the somewhat embarrassed Song Shui, Qin Feng shook his head in confusion. Then, As if thinking of something, he could only shake his head with a wry smile. Shaking his dizzy head, Qin Feng sat up, formed a seal with his hands, and entered into a state of cultivation. Taking a healing pill, he forcibly used the little spirit qi he had left to refine the medicine. No matter how many days he spent recuperating, it would not be as fast as taking the initiative to refine the pills. 3 days passed. The day before, the Song family's people kept coming to visit him. Their attitudes were very enthusiastic, making Qin Feng feel embarrassed to refuse. However, the next day, perhaps because someone reminded him to focus on recuperating, no one came again. After 3 days of recuperation, Qin Feng's internal injuries had improved a lot, and his face was no longer as pale as before. In his final confrontation with Yi Wu, Qin Feng didn't seem to have suffered any serious injuries, but in fact, they were quite serious. Yi Wu was a 9th stage Heaven Realm master, and when Qin Feng fought with her, he had suffered many internal injuries. It was just that the situation at the time was critical, so he had forced himself to not notice. The great desolate war body in Dao Yin mode had been forcibly pushed back. Just the backlash alone was not small. Coupled with the head-on bombardment, one could imagine the extent of his injuries. Especially at the last moment, he had forcibly opened the Immortal Tensei Eye and used the Immortal Light twice in a row. Almost all of his spirit qi had been squeezed dry. Otherwise, he would not have been knocked unconscious by Yi Dance for more than a day. A whole week passed. During these days, Song Shui had been taking care of Qin Feng. After a week of recuperation, coupled with the high-quality healing pills sent by the Song family, Qin Feng's injuries had improved by more than half, and he could now move freely. During this period, Song Shui had been taking care of him, and her face often blushed. Qin Feng vaguely understood the Song family's intention, but he still had a lot of things to do and could not stay here, so he could only refuse this kindness. On the 10th day, Qin Feng's injuries had completely improved, and he had recovered to his peak. After suffering such serious injuries, only his strong physique and the power of wood could recover so quickly. If it were an ordinary person, it would take at least half a month to a month. In the Song family's meeting hall, Song Sangyun, several elders, and a group of upper echelons were seated. There were also some talented juniors of the younger generation, such as Song Su, Song Yuan, and Song Lin. However, Qin Feng did not see Song Shui. Little brother Qin Feng, it is all thanks to little brother Qin Feng that my Song family is qualified to enter the secret pavilion. My Song family owes you a favor, Song Sangyun said with a smile. Clearly, he was in a good mood. Patriarch Song is too polite, Qin Feng replied politely. The heavens have blessed our Song family to have such a son-in-law. The Grand Elder looked at Qin Feng with admiration. That's right. This is my Song family's fortune. The second elder glanced at Feng Chan before turning to Song Sangyun and saying, Patriarch, now that the Flame City Guild has come to an end, shouldn't we prepare for Miss Song Shui's wedding? After all, the news is already spread. If we do not hold the wedding, it will affect Miss Song Shui's reputation. Indeed, we should properly prepare for little Shui's wedding. Song Su's father, Song Kue, smiled and said, Father, we must make the wedding between little Shui and Qin Feng very lively. Let third brother and his wife rest in peace. Our Song family also needs to use this opportunity to restore our prestige. One is the champion of the Flame City Guild, while the other is the Song family's Mississippi. The two of them are truly a match made in heaven. The group of elders and upper echelon spoke one after another. Their expressions were even more eager than if they were marrying off their own daughters or granddaughters. Inside the hall, Qin Feng felt awkward. What the hell was going on? When did he agree to become the Song family's son-in-law? It had been a lie from the start. Why were they acting like it was real now? Patriarch Song. Qin Feng cleared his throat and changed the topic. He asked, the champion of the Flame City Guild will receive many rewards. I wonder if these rewards are with the Song family? Hearing this, Song Sangyun was stunned. Soon after, he shook his head and said, the rewards have yet to be given out. They haven't? Qin Feng's face sank. Was the imperial family going back on the word? He had risked his life for the longevity flower, for his sister and Gong Xiaoxi. That's not it. Seeing that Qin Feng had misunderstood, Song Tsungyan hurriedly explained, "The emperor is very interested in you young people. Today, he will host a banquet in the palace to entertain you. Qin Feng, I heard from Mr. Huangfu that the emperor thinks highly of you. When the time comes, if you have the opportunity to meet him, you must perform well." Chapter 488. The emperor is choosing a disciple after that. Qin Feng chatted with the upper echelons of the Song clan for a while. As for the matter of the marriage, Qin Feng was vague and perfunctory. In the end, under Qin Feng's gaze, Song Tsungyan finally brought him into the palace. The Huangfu family was the leader of Great Yin City, and all the families had to respect them. They were also the ruler of the entire Great Yin Empire. Everyone respected them, so the palace was the most heavily guarded place in the Great Yin Empire. One had to show all kinds of identification to enter and exit, and it was quite complicated. Qin Feng followed Song Tsungyan and passed through layers of guards before arriving at a side courtyard in the palace. "Song family head, aren't we going to a banquet?" Qin Feng asked. This place was very quiet, and it didn't look like a banquet was going to be held. "The banquet is held at night." Song Tsungyan smiled and said, "Mr. Huangfu said that the emperor is very interested in you and wants to meet you in private. Therefore, you have to meet the emperor before the banquet." Qin Feng nodded inwardly. The emperor was the most powerful existence in the Great Yin Empire. It was said that he was also the strongest expert in the Great Yin Empire. He had even entered the forbidden zone of the 9 heavenly realms, and his strength was unfathomable. The two entered a quiet side courtyard. There was a huge palace in front of them, and it was decorated luxuriously. Qin Feng and Song Tsungyan entered. There weren't many people in the palace, only a few old men. Huangfu Qiren, who had interacted with Qin Feng before, was among them. When Huangfu Qiren saw Qin Feng, he smiled kindly at him, and Qin Feng returned the smile. In the palace, besides the few old men, Qin Feng also saw Yi Wu. However, she didn't look good when she saw him. She was gnashing her teeth. Qin Feng's gaze moved slightly and finally landed on the old man sitting in the hall beside Yi Wu. The moment Qin Feng saw the old man, he felt that the spirit power in his body was a little sluggish. An invisible pressure that didn't exist made him feel absent-minded. This was an expert from the Forbidden Zone who had surpassed the 6th heaven realm. He was a terrifying old man, the emperor of the Great Yin Empire. This was the most powerful person Qin Feng had ever come into contact with. Song family Song Tsungyan greets the emperor. Song Tsungyan hurriedly stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Seeing this, Qin Feng also saluted. "Junior Qin Feng greets your majesty. You're the young master of the Song family, the one who heavily injured Xiao Wu all by yourself? Not bad. You really do have an extraordinary bearing." Huangfu Yuan nodded with a smile and looked at Qin Feng with admiration. "Your majesty is overpraising me. I was just lucky. Here, I would like to thank Miss Dance for showing mercy at the end." Qin Feng said modestly. "Move." In response to Qin Feng's gratitude, Dance snorted coldly, her face almost reaching the sky. "Haha, to be able to injure Xiao Wu, it's not a matter of showing mercy." Huangfu Yuan smiled and shook his head. This girl didn't show any mercy. Otherwise, in the end, at this point, Huangfu Yuan suddenly realized something and glanced at Dance, whose cheeks were slightly red. He coughed dryly and quickly shut his mouth. In the end, what? Qin Feng was stunned. Huangfu Yuan clearly had something to say. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt that the gazes of the people in the great hall were somewhat strange, mixed with a little awkwardness. Looking at those complicated gazes, Qin Feng was stunned. Could it be that Dance did something to him while he was unconscious? But he didn't notice any other problems besides being injured. Moreover, even if Dance really did something to him, the Song family should have told him. Why didn't he hear anything? No, nothing. Huang Fu Yuan smiled awkwardly and quickly changed the topic. He asked with a smile, "Little brother Qin Feng, you have such strength at such a young age. You're really talented. I also heard that you lasted 6 days in the Spirit River." Qin Feng nodded. After thinking for a while, he said seriously, "Although the Spirit River's water has a compressive force, it can also temper the body at the same time. Moreover, the spirit Qi there is abundant. It's a rare place for cultivation. It's a pity that the competition is coming and I can't continue to stay in there." Buffed, you sure know how to talk big. Edance pursed her lips, her face full of disbelief. "I lasted 3 days in there and was half dead tired. I don't believe that you can still take a bath and sleep in there." Qin Feng was stunned. He wasn't trying to act cool, but it was true. Cultivating in the Spirit River would definitely be 5 to 6 times faster than cultivating in the outside world. However, he also understood that if the demon I didn't help at the end, his limit would probably be 3 days. Of course, he wasn't at his peak at that time. After all, his body was seriously injured at that time and couldn't withstand the strong compressive force. With his current physical condition, he might be able to last longer. Qin Feng smiled faintly and didn't talk much about it. If he didn't do it and said too much, people who didn't believe him would think that he was talking nonsense. Being able to last 6 days is also a kind of strength, even if it's cheating. I heard that the girl with the elemental spirit body from the Zhou clan is the same as you. It seems like there are a few amazing seedlings in Great Yin City this time. Huang Fuing smiled and looked at Qin Feng. His eyes were full of admiration. "Little fellow, do you want to be my disciple?" Song Sanyan's breathing quickened when he heard this. If Qin Feng could become the emperor's disciple, the status of the Song clan would rise again. Moreover, the emperor only had 4 disciples in his life. 3 of them had finished their apprenticeship and were famous in the continent. The 4th was the strongest among the younger generation in Great Yin City. He would definitely have great achievements in the future. Now that the emperor had taken a fancy to Qin Feng, it was enough to prove that his potential was limitless. Such a son-in-law was enough to lead the Song clan to a more glorious path. Yiwu was also stunned. She had never thought that the emperor, who had never taken the initiative to accept a disciple, would take the initiative to accept Qin Feng as his disciple today. One had to know that she was personally sent here by her family to show the emperor her talent. At that time, the emperor didn't treat her like how he treated Qin Feng. Perhaps because of her relationship with the little princess, the emperor's love for her was more like a grandfather's love for his granddaughter. "This guy is really lucky," Yiwu muttered in her heart. She glared fiercely at Qin Feng. In fact, everyone was surprised, but Qin Feng was even more surprised. He had never thought that the high and mighty emperor of the Great Yin Empire would look at him differently just because he had participated in a competition that he didn't want to participate in at the beginning. Although becoming the emperor's disciple was the greatest wish of the younger generation in Great Yin City and even the entire Great Yin Empire, he was not a citizen of Great Yin City. The burden on his shoulders made him not qualified to enjoy this kind of life and treatment that others envied. Chapter 489. The First Princess, "Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty. But I've already learned from another master. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Your Majesty." Qin Feng cupped his hands and said apologetically. Hearing this, the emperor was slightly stunned. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "I was careless. Such an outstanding young man. I'm afraid that an expert has already beaten me to it. I wonder where little brother Qin Feng's master is. I like to make friends with him. Since he can cultivate such an outstanding disciple, he must be an expert. I'm sorry. My master is just a man with a strange temperament. I rarely see him in a year," Qin Feng said with a smile. Huang Fu Yuan shook his head regretfully. He didn't doubt Qin Feng's words. After all, it was unrealistic for such a young man to cultivate by himself without an expert's guidance. "Hey, Qin Feng, you're too arrogant. My master took the initiative to accept you as his disciple. How dare you refuse? You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Yiwu said with dissatisfaction. She thought that Qin Feng would be ecstatic if her master took the initiative to accept him as his disciple. But this guy actually refused. In her heart, Huang Fuyuan was as close to her as her grandfather. She couldn't stand others refusing her master. Hearing Yiwu's words, Qin Feng's face darkened slightly. He said, "Missy, don't you know that it's a big taboo to accept a disciple from another master? If I don't have any principles and take the emperor as my master today, then I may take someone more powerful as my master in the future. I'm afraid that even everyone here will look down on me for such an unprincipled person. As the saying goes, a teacher for a day is a teacher for life. Since I have a master, I should respect him as my master and father. This is a person's moral bottom line. If I can't even do this, then what's the difference between me and those who betray their masters? Missy, please think about what it means to respect your master before you teach me a lesson," Qin Feng said coldly. Hearing this, Yiwu was so angry that her face turned ashen. Ever since she was born, no one had ever spoken to her in such a tone. The eldest Mrs. Temper flared up for a moment. She pointed at Qin Feng and said, "Shut up. Today, little Wu, don't be rude." Huang Fuyuan's expression darkened as he stopped dance. He looked at Qin Feng and nodded repeatedly. Once a teacher, always a teacher. You have principles and a bottom line. I can only blame myself for not having the fortune to accept such a disciple. Fine. Huang Fuyuan shook his head with a smile and sighed. You're about the same age as my good-for-nothing daughter. She's always liked to make friends with young and promising talents. If you're interested, you can have a chat at the banquet later. As soon as Huang Fuyuan said this, the expressions of everyone in the palace changed. Most of the people present were shrewd people, especially the few older generation people in the palace. They had a slight understanding of Huang Fuyuan's thoughts. He wanted to choose Qin Feng as his son-in-law. In fact, if they thought about it carefully, they could understand. Qin Feng had already shown his potential. If there were no accidents, he would definitely become a top expert in the future. Even the great Yin Empire valued such an expert greatly. If Qin Feng became the emperor's son-in-law, he would be a member of the Huangfu family. This would only benefit the great Yin Empire. Even if he doesn't choose a disciple, the emperor doesn't want to give up on such a good seedling. An elder stroked his beard and nodded repeatedly. Unlike the others, Song Canyun's expression was a little ugly. He understood what Huang Fuyuan meant. He also had his eyes on Qin Feng. Since Qin Feng had not become the son-in-law of the Song family, it was not against ethics to choose Qin Feng as his son-in-law. At this moment, Song Canyun's heart was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have forced the marriage in a few days. Qin Feng smiled and did not say anything. He was not stupid and naturally understood what Huang Fuyuan meant. By the way, you're still a spiritual force master, right? Huang Fuyuan suddenly asked. Qin Feng nodded and said, but compared to spiritual force is much worse. Spiritual force does not have a complete cultivation system, so the progress is naturally slow. Huang Fuyuan nodded slightly and immediately said, however, my imperial family has a spiritual art. If you cultivate it, it should be beneficial to the growth of spiritual force. Hearing this, Qin Feng's eyes lit up. He naturally knew spiritual arts. Just like spiritual force cultivation, martial arts, and so on, it could increase battle strength. When he obtained the inheritance of the mental path, he had imprinted some mental art inheritances in his mental energy. However, to activate them, there was a high requirement for mental energy. At the very least, with his current cultivation, he was still unable to activate the mental art inheritances. If he could obtain a spiritual art here and use it to assist his cultivation, it would definitely be of great help to the growth of his spiritual force. Spiritual arts were an extremely rare thing. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. Even the demon, I did not have such a collection. Men, bring me that spirit art. Huang Fuyuan glanced at Huang Fuqiren as he spoke. The latter immediately understood what he meant. So he cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, did you forget that it was taken away by Her Highness the young princess 2 days ago?" The princess is also quite knowledgeable about spiritual power. So why don't Your Majesty pass down a verbal order and let little brother Qinfeng and Her Highness the young princess study that spiritual art together? Yes, that's right. Huang Fuyuan nodded and pondered for a moment. He waved his arm, and a ray of light shot towards Qinfeng. "Take this token, and that little girl will not dare to disobey." Qinfeng nodded. He did not care what tricks these two old men were playing. Anyway, it was good for him. Catching the ray of light, a golden token appeared in his hand. Qinfeng bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Okay, go. I will host a banquet in Purple Garden to entertain you little heroes. This should be something that you young guys like very much. You can also interact with each other." Huang Fuyuan waved his hand. Qinfeng and Yi-Dance walked out and walked towards Purple Garden. Yi-Dance glanced at Qinfeng and turned her head. Her long black hair deliberately brushed past Qinfeng's face. Qinfeng touched his nose helplessly. This woman really held a grudge. Just as he was about to leave, a soft chuckle that made the man's legs go soft suddenly rang out behind the two of them. "Ha! Is this the little hero who defeated Yi-Dance?" Hearing this laughter, Qinfeng turned around and looked at the charming woman lazily leaning against the stone pillar. Even though he had no concept of beauty, at this moment, he could not help but think of one word: enchanting. The woman was wearing a long purple dress, which set off the curves of her slender and graceful body. Her delicate cheeks seemed to be shining with a jade light. Her pair of eyes were as charming as silk, as if they could steal one's soul. This was definitely a great seductress who could bring disaster to a country. However, why did this woman look so familiar? He was sure that he had never seen this woman before. After thinking for a while, Qinfeng could not figure out the reason. He could only shake his head and throw away this thought. Chapter 490. Attending the banquet, Qinfeng was stunned. He didn't expect this beautiful woman to be the princess of the great Yin Empire. His eyes couldn't help but heat up at the thought of the princess, and he walked over. However, before he could take a few steps, Yi-Dance pulled him back. "What?" Qinfeng glanced at Yi-Dance. "This is the eldest princess. The one who took the spiritual art from Master is the little princess." Yi-Dance rolled her eyes at Qinfeng. She walked up to the eldest princess and sized her up. She asked, "Huang Fuyao, you going to attend the banquet dressed like this? Why, don't I look good?" Huang Fuyao twirled in a circle, her enchanting and seductive figure on full display. She then tidied her hair, looked at Qinfeng, and said with a smile, "The banquet is still in preparation and will only begin at night. I came to see what's so special about the young man that even Imperial Father thinks highly of. Now that you've seen him, you can leave. We still have things to do," Yi-Dance said. Huang Fuyao smiled lightly, and his gaze swept up and down the two of them. After a short moment, he suddenly said, "Little Wu, do you have any plans?" "What? I can't even speak a few words with this little hero?" Yi-Dance raised her eyebrows. She reprimanded, "Huang Fuyao, don't talk nonsense. Master asked me to bring him to find Huan Huan." "Oh." Huang Fuyao let out a long "oh" and revealed an expression that said, "You don't have to explain. I can't be bothered with you." Yi-Dance glared at Huang Fuyao and pulled Qinfeng away. "Little hero, we'll meet again if fate wills it." Huang Fuyao winked at Qinfeng. Then she swayed her slender waist and left. "What are you looking at? Is she very pretty?" Yi-Dance snorted coldly when she saw Qinfeng still staring at Huang Fuyao. "Yes, she's quite pretty. At least, she's much more pleasing to the eye than you." Qinfeng touched his nose and said seriously. Hearing this, Yi-Dance glared at him and said, "I advise you not to have any thoughts about her. This woman is not as simple as she looks." Qinfeng raised his eyebrows. "Is she very special?" "Heh, this woman's methods are vicious. There are many young elites around her, but I have never heard of anyone getting any benefits from her. If you have any thoughts about her, The one who will suffer in the end will definitely be you. Qin Feng nodded. There weren't many simple-minded people in the imperial palace. However, he didn't care. After entering the pavilion of heavenly secrets, he would be leaving soon. He wouldn't have much interaction with the people here. Let's go to the little princess first. Iwu led Qin Feng around the palace for a long time. Along the way, she asked Qin Feng about some of the methods he used in the battle, especially the method he used to control his own flames. In response, Qin Feng gave a perfunctory answer. He's really cautious. Dance muttered to herself as she didn't get any useful information from him after beating around the bush for a long time. After a while, they came to the little princess's residence. However, they were told that the little princess wasn't there. After asking around, they found out that the little princess had already gone to the banquet. Looking at the gradually darkening sky, Dance said softly, "We should also go to the banquet. Let's go." Qin Feng nodded slightly. Dance didn't move. She looked at Qin Feng with a complicated expression. Qin Feng was stunned. What was this woman thinking? Qin Feng, if you don't want to be Master's disciple, then you have to be careful at this banquet. In the future, try not to have anything to do with the imperial family. Dance suddenly said. Qin Feng looked at Dance in surprise. He didn't understand what she meant. The conflict between the factions in the palace is actually an enlarged version of the internal conflict between clans. However, it's even more cruel and dark. You're not Master's disciple, and you don't have a strong family background. If you get involved in the disputes in the palace and become a thorn in the side of some factions, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your life. Even Huangfu, Yao has noticed you. I'm guessing that many people are paying attention to you. If you can't become their chess piece, then you can only become an abandoned one. I'm sure you don't need me to explain this. Dance said, your current status is special. I'm afraid that many people already know that you decline Master's offer to be his disciple. It's hard to guarantee that there won't be some people with ulterior motives who will secretly use Master's regard for you to do something. Hearing this, Qin Feng fell silent. He really didn't think so much before. After Dance's reminder, he realized that he had thought too simply before. The first princess he met just now was probably not as simple as she said. Do you know why Master has only accepted a total of 4 disciples until now? Dance stared at Qin Feng and carefully looked around. She said in a low voice, the Great Yin Empire is not very big, but it's not small either. There are naturally many talented people, but many of them end up as cannon fodder in the struggle for power. Qin Feng was shocked. Dance's words meant that there had been people who had received the same treatment as him, but they had ended up as abandoned pawns in the struggle for power. You've been chosen by the Emperor of the Great Yin Empire. This is a great honor for you, but it will also attract the attention of various people who play with power. Do you think the first princess is simple to be able to form her own faction in the palace? The internal conflict between the clans is very dark, but the struggle for power in the palace is even darker. You don't know when you become a stepping stone under someone else's feet, especially since you rejected Master. This also means that you've lost your greatest protection. The various people who have designs on you won't be too afraid of you. Why are you telling me all this? Qin Feng stared at Dance and asked, out of admiration for you. Do you believe me? Dance shook her head and then said softly, anyway, I've already reminded you. It's still up to you to decide what to do. The banquet is about to start. Let's hurry over. Looking at Dance's back view, Qin Feng frowned slightly. Helping the Song family had already made some of his enemies bear a grudge against him. If some people in the palace were to also bear a grudge against him, it would really not be a good thing for him. The two of them walked slowly toward the banquet venue. Waves of noisy laughter mixed with some music could be heard from the main hall. As they slowly approached the main hall, Qin Feng looked up and glanced around. He saw many people sitting in the spacious main hall, laughing and chatting with each other. It was just like a joyous gathering. Standing by the door, Qin Feng's gaze swept across the main hall. He was somewhat surprised to find that not only were Ai, Tianxing, Lu and Zhou, Mo, Sun, Yulei, and the others here, but even the first princess Huangfu Yao was here. At this moment, She had changed into a tight red chong sam and a snow-white fox fur shawl. It added a bit of grace and luxury to her. Her beautiful and enchanting curves attracted the gazes of many men in the main hall. She had become the center of attention of the banquet. Chapter 491. Xiao Nai Qin Feng smiled. Had he not experienced the world? Perhaps his experience in the primitive land was not something these people who only knew how to play politics and fight for power could imagine. Shaking his head slightly, Qin Feng was too lazy to say anything more. He quickly separated from Yi-Dance and found a place with fewer people. Yi-Dance's appeal in Great Yin City was probably not any less than that of the first princess Huang Fuyao. He did not want to ride on her popularity and expose himself. Just as he found a good place to sit, Song Yuan's voice came from not far away. "Hi, Qin Feng. Over here." Qin Feng looked around and had no choice but to walk over. The people invited to this banquet were the young masters and young mistresses of the various aristocratic families who had outstanding performances in Yin City. It could be said that apart from the young masters and young mistresses of the aristocratic families, those who could attend this banquet were the elites of the younger generation who were ranked at the top. The Zhou clan, Song clan, Supreme Mystery Sect, Zhou clan, and other influential families were naturally invited as well. "Qin Feng, what did the emperor say to you? Why do I feel that grandfather's expression is not very good?" Song Su asked. Previously, he had heard from others that Qin Feng had tactfully rejected the emperor's disciple selection. Even so, Song Sanyan's expression was not bad. Qin Feng looked at the two and quickly understood. It seemed that Song Sanyan did not tell him the emperor's intentions. Of course, this kind of thing could not be told to others. No matter how obvious the meaning was, as long as the emperor did not say anything, it could not be said. He didn't say anything? Qin Feng shook his head and quickly changed the topic. "How are the prizes for the champion distributed?" In the end, the Zhou clan, and the Mo clan won the championship together. Qin Feng only knew that the prizes would be distributed according to the performance of the participants in the finals. However, he was not sure how much he would receive. "Your performance was the best, so you should receive more prizes." Song Yuan smiled and said, "But don't worry. Father told me to tell you that the longevity flower is among your prizes." Hearing that, Qin Feng nodded. As long as he got the longevity flower, he was relieved. Touching the jade pendant on his chest, Qin Feng said softly in his heart, "Sister, Xiaoxi, don't worry. You'll wake up in 3 days." The divine secret pavilion would open in 3 days. According to the demon eye, Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi had a 70 to 80% chance of waking up with the help of the longevity flower and the exotic desolate spiritual qi. Qin Feng. While Qin Feng was daydreaming, someone suddenly patted him heavily on the shoulder. Qin Feng turned around and found Zhou Mo standing behind him, holding a plate of desserts and blinking his big eyes at him. "What's the matter?" Qin Feng asked. "Of course I'm here to celebrate our teamwork that day," Zhou Mo said, very naturally squeezing Song Yuan away from Qin Feng and sitting down. "Miss Zhou, aren't you being very impolite?" Song Yuan was speechless. "This place doesn't belong to your Song clan. No one said that this seat was yours. Little girl, go play somewhere else." Zhou Mo glanced at her, acting like a big sister. Of course, with her strength, she was qualified to do so. Everyone knew that it was Qin Feng who had severely injured Yi Wu. However, it was Zhou Mo from the Zhou clan who had forced clan leader Yi to save his daughter at the critical moment. Just based on the fact that she was able to see the end of her teamwork with Qin Feng, everyone knew that this Yuan spirit body of the Zhou clan was not simple. "Hey, Qin Feng, we worked well together in the Spirit River. What do you think? Does the secret pavilion want to do something big again?" Zhou Mo blinked, instigating Qin Feng. Song Su and Song Yuan looked at each other. The two of them had worked together in the Spirit River. No wonder they had lasted for 6 days. Qin Feng was still half-hearted at first. However, when he heard Zhou Mo's words, he immediately became interested. If she had to name the person she valued the most among the younger generation in Great Yin City, it would be Zhou and Mo. She had the demon eye. According to the demon eye, her potential was limitless. Nothing could happen to her. He also had the demon eye. Zhou and Mo was his best partner. Her ability to control the demon eye is a little strange. If only I could. At this thought, Qin Feng smiled and nodded. Just as he was about to say something, Yiwu walked over, patted his shoulder, and said, "Boy, I have something to tell you. Come here." "What is it?" "You'll know when you come." Yiwu did not say much. She pulled Qin Feng away. "Hey, how can you be so unreasonable? We are discussing something." Zhou and Mo quickly grabbed Qin Feng's other arm. She stared at Yiwu with a dark expression and said, "Aren't you looking down on me too much?" Yiwu looked at Zhou and Mo and raised her eyebrows. "I really don't think much of a little girl like you. What's wrong? You won against me through trickery in the past, and now you dare to not take me seriously?" It would have been better if Zhou and Mo did not stop her. Now that she did, Yiwu's anger rose. She did not hit her too hard because she was young and a girl. In the end, she lost because of her. How could she not be angry? "Why? You want to take revenge on me? Sure, hit me then. I'd like to see how you're going to explain yourself." Zhou and Mo acted helpless. What could Yiwu do to him? Yiwu gritted her teeth and glared at Zhou and Mo. However, she really could not hit Zhou and Mo just like that. "Little brat, I won't argue with you like this." The quarrel quickly attracted the attention of many people. They all looked over. One of them was recognized as the #1 person among the younger generation in Great Yin City. She had countless admirers. The other had an extremely rare elemental spirit body. She was born to be the center of attention. No matter who they were, they would be the center of attention no matter where they went. Now that they were together, they naturally attracted a lot of attention. When they saw that each of them was holding one of Qin Feng's arms as if they were fighting over him, their eyes widened. They wished that they could take Qin Feng's place, even if they had to give up 20 years of their lives. Of course, with their appearances, temperament, and status, there was no lack of admirers in the hall. And these people looked at Qin Feng with gazes filled with jealousy and anger. "Hee, I heard that the second son of the National Protector General, Xiao and I, has returned from the border." "Xiao and I? The king of defiance, Xiao and I? The one who fights and kills as he pleases, and taught those young masters a lesson?" "Yes, he's the barbarian who gave many people headaches. I remember that guy seems to be very interested in Yiwu. Hee, I heard that he's here too. I think something is going to happen tonight. That guy seems to be here." At the door, under the illumination of the light, a slender figure appeared, revealing a young face that was as sharp as a knife. His eyes were as fierce as a tiger's. This young man in his mid-20s crossed his arms and pouted. He looked at the people in the hall and muttered a few words. Immediately, some people who wanted to get close to him were scared away. Chapter 492. Fai Qin Feng felt a headache coming on when he saw the two girls fighting against each other, neither willing to back down. Just as he was about to say something to ease the atmosphere, his bitter smile suddenly stiffened and his quiet pupils abruptly shrunk. Without any warning, ferocious spiritual energy abruptly surged out from Qin Feng's body and broke free from the two girls. His body forcefully twisted as his palm slightly rotated and clenched into a fist. With a sharp sound of breaking wind, he violently smashed towards the force that had appeared behind him. Boom! With a muffled sound, a powerful energy force shot out from Qin Feng's fist in all directions. The surrounding tables and chairs instantly cracked under this force. The ferocious force that was transmitted from the fist caused Qin Feng to retreat a few steps before he was able to resolve it. His smiling face gradually darkened as he raised his head and looked at the young man who was swinging his hand and fiercely glaring at him with a face full of ferocity. Dark and cold, killing intent surged out from his pitch-black eyes. The ferocious force that suddenly erupted in the hall swiftly attracted the surrounding gazes. When these gazes saw the young man with a face full of ferocity, they were all stunned. Soon after, they cast gloating gazes towards Qin Feng, who was facing off against the young man. Clearly, they had all recognized this young man who possessed an extremely great reputation in Great Yin City. How they finally started fighting. In the hall, the first princess, Huang Fu Yao, smiled as she swirled the red wine in her transparent wine cup and softly laughed. That is Xiao and I. Most of the people surrounding Huang Fu Yao were nobles. Hence, they immediately recognized the young man with a face full of ferocity. Immediately, their expressions changed slightly as they involuntarily cried out. Many of them had suffered at the hands of this fellow back then. No wonder you said during the day that something interesting would happen in tonight's banquet. So you were talking about this fellow. Looking at Xiao and I, who was dressed in black, a young man beside Huang Fu Yao was also stunned. Soon after, he suddenly understood and laughed softly. Many people in Great Yin City know that Xiao and I admires Yi Dance of the Yi Dance family. Back then, this fellow was beaten up by Yi Dance many times, but he refused to give up. He even threatened others not to get close to Yi Dance. The young man glanced at Qin Feng, whose face was gloomy because he was caught off guard by the sneak attack. He chuckled and said, "He's quite unlucky to let Xiao and I see this scene. With this guy's temper, I'm afraid he won't rest until he dies today." When Xiao and I left Great Flame City and went to the border, he was already a little Heaven Realm Master. After 2 years of training in the border barracks, I'm afraid his strength has reached the peak of the Little Heaven Realm, or even the 9th stage Heaven Realm. Among the younger generation in Great Yin City, besides the publicly acknowledged #1 expert, Yi Dance, who was like a mountain that suppressed all the other young people to the point they couldn't raise their heads, this great general's second son was the most outstanding. He was also the only one who could slightly fight with Yi Dance, although most of them ended up badly beaten. However, this also proved Xiao Ni's strength. He was far stronger than the other young people who didn't even dare to provoke Yi Dance. Now that he had fought a bloody battle at the border for 2 years and experienced the tempering of blood and fire, he was even more incomparable to before. Although Qin Feng was able to heavily injure Yi Dance due to special circumstances, it also shows that he is very difficult to deal with. Moreover, Father values him greatly. This is something that even Xiao and I couldn't achieve. Qin Feng may not be at a disadvantage in this conflict. Huang Fu Yao swirled the wine cup with a charming smile on her face. Although this is the case, we can't sit idly by and let Xiao and I do as he pleases. Perhaps we can win over this person called Qin Feng. The young man smiled and said. Huang Fu Yao nodded lightly. She had the same intention as well. Xiao Ni's fists were relaxed and clenched tightly again. This repeated a few times before the numbness was expelled. Glancing at the young man, who was like a fierce tiger in the mountains, Xiao and I took a deep breath and coldly said, "Do you want to die?" Qin Feng was very clear about the previous attack, that this fellow in front of him had absolutely no intention of holding back. If it was someone with a slower reaction time, he would have been severely injured. He was afraid that if he was unable to react in time, he would be seriously injured on the spot. Therefore, his heart was filled with rage towards this person who inexplicably tried to kill him. Xiao and I grinned at Qin Feng, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. He looked rather ferocious and did not reply. Instead, his burning gaze paused on Yi Dance, who had a pretty face filled with anger. He softened his voice and laughed loudly. "My little Wu, you have become even more beautiful after not seeing you for 2 years. Did you miss me? You silly goose. Are you looking for a beating again?" Yi Dance gritted her teeth as her voluptuous chest rose and fell slightly. She did not expect that this fellow would still be as rude and unreasonable as before after not seeing him for 2 years. He did not say anything and directly attacked. If there was one person among the younger generation who could make Yi Dance pay a little attention to, it would probably be Xiao and I. Although he always made her angry out of humiliation, it was undeniable that Xiao and I was the only person in the entire Great Yin City and even the Great Yin Empire who could cross swords with her. Due to the relationship between the two families and the fact that Xiao and I only had a foul mouth, she really could not do anything to him. She did not expect that after 2 years of training at the border, his violent temper still did not change. Hee, I like it when you call me silly goose. It is so intimate, just like how a wife calls her husband. Xiao and I scratched his head and laughed foolishly. Dance was also very helpless against this Xiao and I, who could not be cut by a knife. No matter how hard he fought, he did not know how to restrain himself. She could not be bothered with him and turned away. Dance quickly walked to Qin Feng's side and sized him up. She hurriedly asked with a worried expression, "Qin Feng, are you all right?" Qin Feng shook his head and fixed his gaze on Xiao and I. He asked softly, "Who is he?" "The second son of the Protector General of the nation, Xiao Tianlong. He is a very troublesome lunatic." Dance smiled bitterly as she held Qin Feng's arm intimately. Hearing the conversation between the two, Qin Feng roughly understood why this Xiao and I suddenly attacked him. Even so, he was still very angry. Qin Feng glanced at Dance, and his eyes flickered. This woman suddenly showed so much concern for him, and even pretended to be so intimate. He quickly understood the reason. This woman still held a grudge against him for what happened in the finals. She could not bring herself to do it, so she purposely used Xiao and I to deal with him. A woman's heart is really the most poisonous. Since you are heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. Thinking of this, he suddenly stretched out his hand and held Dance's small waist and pulled her into his embrace. This sudden action stunned the surrounding people. Even Dance was stunned. Her expression turned sluggish as she opened her eyes wide and stared blankly at Qin Feng. She had never been so intimate with someone of the opposite sex who was not related by blood. Therefore, she forgot to struggle for a moment and just stared blankly at Qin Feng. And when this scene fell into Xiao Ni's eyes, his face immediately turned gloomy. "You are courting death." Xiao and I shouted coldly and suddenly attacked Qin Feng. His huge fist carried a fierce wind as it blasted towards Qin Feng's head. Qin Feng tilted his head and dodged the fist. His eyes were cold as he waved his arm and slapped towards Xiao Ni's face. Listening to the whistling sound of the wind, it was clear that he did not show any mercy in this slap. But contrary to Qin Feng's expectations, Xiao and I did not dodge. Instead, the fist that went past his head turned into a claw and fiercely clawed at his neck. "You want to see who is more ruthless?" Qin Feng sneered in his heart. He did not dodge, and the strength in his palm suddenly increased. If Xiao and I was hit, he would not be able to survive. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.